you. All right.
Yes.
Hello, everybody, and I would like to open the meeting, the Monday, May 1st meeting of the Manchester Select Board with a roll call vote. Brian Solacey.
Here.
From the sunny side of the country. And John Round.
Just doing this to make you jealous.
Not working, we had sunshine too. Kathy Bellata.
Here.
Ann Harrison. Here. Becky Jakes here. 4 in person and 1 via Zoom. I am. All right, first up, we have the public comments on any items not on the agenda. Is there anybody who would like to make a comment today on an item not on the agenda? Okay, seeing nothing, chairman's report and action items. We have, I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but does anybody have, we'll come back to the select board policies later. But anything that they wanted to comment on the action items? Okay, moving right along. I would like to open the public hearing for the trees on, and I am afraid my computer is not cooperating with me, so I can't read those. Anne, would you mind reading you have it on yours?
I'm sorry. The National Grid?
Yeah.
The National Grid, yes, I have it. Oh, National Grid, sorry. National Grid public hearing on Bennett Street.
Yes, the select board. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm gonna,
What am I supposed to read? Okay. We're opening a public hearing at 6:30 in the town hall and on Zoom on a request from National Grid to install approximately a 5-foot conduit from National Grid HH number 99-4 to customers' property at 19 Bennett Street. I move to open such a hearing.
Okay, moved by Ann Harrison, seconded by
Here.
John Round, roll call vote. Brian Solacey,
Yes.
John Round,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata.
Yes.
Ann Harrison.
Yes.
And Becky Jakes says yes. All right.
Sabita Mahabir Sheehy, representing National Grid, 44 River Street, Beverly, Massachusetts. This is to provide an upgraded service for 19 Bennett Street.
Okay, questions from the board, John?
Most of the information is fairly complete. Just question, what is the elapsed time to do this? Is this like a 1-day deal or 2 days or 3 days?
Should be 1 day.
1 day. Okay.
And we did get Nate's email
Yeah.
saying everything seemed to be in order and that stipulating the conditions about getting the approval and having police detail and everything. Kathy, do you have any questions?
Nope.
Ann?
Nope.
I did have a question. Where are you actually, is the access coming between Sarah Malish's property and the other is because there's a big trench. Is that where the access is going?
I knew they were digging for water. Sewer. And sewer, okay. But I don't believe they've dug for us yet.
Okay, so that's my question, and Nate, maybe you know the answer to this. Where from the property is the power actually coming?
I would defer to Grid. I mean, it sounds like it's an underground line. I don't know specifically their duct bank is. in the
It's in
road.
front of the home next door. So if you're facing 19, it's the home on the
It's to the
right-hand
right.
side.
Okay, and my question, the reason I'm asking is that it looks as if access to that property has gone through a curb cut that has not been actually taken. Is that correct? Has there been a curb cut that's been applied for this access?
Not that I'm aware, I guess.
Oh,
I'm not
The
familiar
cut,
enough.
I think, is for the sewer.
It's been for a lot of things, but I'm just saying, and it just coming before us, my concern is that we have a property where there's a lot being done. Curb cuts don't come before us, however, the access for other purposes does. And if they haven't, if the builder hasn't gotten a curb cut to be able to access, as they have been,
We don't even know that this is a curb cut.
that's what I want to find out. And that's why I'm asking.
Question, is a curb cut a final result? Or might they cut that curb because they just need to for all of the piping? And
Exactly.
then they replace it unless they're gonna go through the formal process, in which case, if that's the situation, it's not really relevant whether it's cut or not right now. It's gotta be restored to the position. in which it was.
Exactly.
But DPW would sign off on
A curb.
An official,
Either
even on
way.
a temporary one?
a temporary or,
All right, well, then I stand corrected.
because they're cutting the road and cutting the curb.
Yes, they are.
So, and you say that has not taken place at all?
So there, I guess, we can go back to what we're defining as a curb cut. They do not have I'm not, or I guess, I haven't reviewed a permanent curb cut. I assume when planning board, and their permits were issued, they received a curb cut for the new house. For what National Grid needs to do, that's the normal course of construction, getting through.
Mhm.
Anything that they would remove, they would replace within the same day of work. So if they have to remove, I assume you would go under the piece of curbing to get to the site, or if you have to remove it, they're gonna reset it within the same day. So I wouldn't define that as a curb cut.
Right, that's more of a road opening.
Yeah, it's a
permit.
road opening permit for,
For their purposes?
yes.
Right.
Okay,
But
okay,
We haven't done any of
right.
ours.
And I was trying to determine from which part of the property it would come,
Okay.
and you answered. Ann, what did you want to say?
I had an opportunity to look, and it appears that the garage is on the other side of the house from this cut. So I doubt that this is a permanent.
Okay. Do we have, where's Brian? Brian, any comments?
Yes, ma'am.
or questions?
No, I think it's pretty well cut and dried. And if DPW is happy, I'm happy.
All right, wonderful. Are there any questions or comments from anybody in attendance?
Sarah Melish, 11 Bennett Street. I've had major construction done on my house. There's been a lot of work done on my street. Dig Safe has been there many times. They never, ever have marked the electrical service. And my concern is that my electrical service is from that handheld that's being dug up. And I would like to have the electrical service marked. I talked to a landscaper who did work on the property back in 1995. He thought my service might be under the driveway. But it seems to me National Grid doesn't know where it is because Dig Safe has never marked it. And it seems that if it's coming out of there, that National Grid could mark it as determining that it goes to number 11 Bennett.
Okay. We would only mark it in the public way.
It's never been marked in the public way.
Okay.
It's never shown where it's coming in from the street.
Okay.
A gas has been marked all the way up my property line on
Okay.
both sides. But electrical's never been marked.
Nate, is that a reasonable condition to have them mark if it's in the public way, mark where it is, have Dig Safe do that?
If they have those records, it's all dependent on if National Grid has those records. Which,
I'll see what I can find.
Yeah. Yeah,
But what does the homeowner do if there's no
Right.
National Grid records?
You actually own your underground service to the connection point. So if the connection point was in that handhold, because it's multiple customers out of it, they own it to that handhold.
But how do I know that? How do I know it goes to that handhold?
Your contractor did not give you, wasn't that part of your,
Electrical service was put in 1980 when Manchester Electric ran the electric company.
so not National Grid. Okay, I'm not sure how best to address Sarah's needs. Nate, do you have any suggestions on that, or is that just, I
I
mean,
can-
I mean, that,
You can trace it.
yeah, you could have an electrical contractor in theory trace it, but if National Grid, when they do open the handhole, if you could potentially, see what's coming in and, mark it from that perspective,
yeah,
that might be the most viable option in the short term.
thank you.
you're welcome.
Sarah, is that all right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a very difficult position. If the electrical line is under my driveway, I cannot have my driveway dug up.
right,
And if National Grid is responsible for marking where the electrical service goes to the house. And if they can't do it,
We don't mark on private,
I'm talking on the street.
on the, that's fine, that's fine.
So, okay. Okay, well, National Grid will try to see if they can determine
If it's out of that.
on the
handle.
public
Yeah.
property
Yeah.
where it is.
It could be a T box, in which case we're digging up the street to find it.
You're going, it is in the T box. There's no opening in the street.
And so you have read the conditions, the letter which Nate sent out. Have you seen that?
No, I have not.
It's our basic conditions, so
Oh, okay.
street opening permit,
It is.
it's just our basic conditions, letting DPW know that you're doing it. Backfilling, paving.
It would actually be the customer's contractor,
Okay,
so I'll just let them know.
All right, so we need to get you a copy of that letter that you can then. And,
We'll attach that to.
okay, great, thank you. Any other questions or comments regarding this hearing? The public hearing for National Grid?
Joe Sabella, I have a question.
Joe, would you please, state your address?
15 Rosedale Avenue.
And we're talking about the National Grid hearing pertaining to the property on Bennett Street. Is that the item on which you have a comment?
No, I have a question.
Okay, we'll come back to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. All right, if there are no other questions regarding this, may I have a
I
motion?
move to close the public hearing on the National Grid installation of conduit at N-Grid HH pound sign 99-4 to the customer's property.
Second,
Second,
Moved by Ann Harrison, seconded by John Round, closely seconded by Brian Solacey. Roll call vote. Brian,
yes.
John,
yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
and Becky says yes. Okay, thank you very much. Right, next up, we have,
We need to approve it
we
after.
do need to approve it. Thank you. Now, we're gonna approve the
I
hearing.
vote to approve National Grid's request to install more or less 5 feet of conduit from National Grid HH pound sign 99-4 to customer property at 19 Bennett Street.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Ann, seconded by Kathy. Roll call vote. Ann,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
John,
Yes,
Brian,
Yes,
and Becky says yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, sorry about rushing that through. Okay, may I have a motion to open the public tree hearing?
so moved.
No,
Second.
okay, moved by John Round, seconded Ann Harrison. Roll call vote. Brian Solacey.
yes,
John
yes.
Round,
Yes,
Kathy Bellata.
Yes.
Ann Harrison.
Yes.
And Becky Jake says yes. So first on this, we have 5 Tux Point Road, the 18-inch ash. Tom, did you want to make comments, or does anybody have any comments on that tree? Everybody had a chance to go take a look?
Mhm.
Quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to miss.
Every day.
It's very, yes, okay, actually, do we need to pull any of these out?
I think we need to pull out the one at 115 School Street.
I agree. Okay, so moving forward on the other two, the 5 Tux Point Road and the corner of Arbella and Pleasant. And the 5th Tux Point Road looks pretty bad.
Maybe Joe has a comment. Maybe Joe's comment is about the one on Arbella, so
Um,
perhaps we should take these each individually.
All right, we will start with the Tux Point Road 18-inch ash.
I move to approve the removal of the 18-inch ash at 5 Tux Point Road as requested by Brian Orr.
Second.
I was going to take public comment on
Okay.
those first, but we've moved and seconded.
Well, we can have comment now.
Okay, does anybody wish to comment on the tree on 5 Tux Point Road? Okay, seeing none, motion made by Ann, seconded by Kathy, roll call vote, John,
Yes,
Kathy,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes,
Brian,
Yes,
and Becky says yes, so 5 Tux Point Road is going to go sadly away, hopefully with all of its, the emerald ash or. Okay, next up, we have corner of Arbella and Pleasant Street, the 18-inch sugar maple, which Tom reported is all but dead. Any comments from the board before I go to the public? Okay, Joe, is this what you wanted to make a comment on?
No, I have a question on National Grid, not on the topic that we discussed, but another problem with the street light that the DPW is aware of, that's on 24/7. It's been on for the past 3 years solid.
Okay, I'm sorry to say, but we already did the public comments on items not on the agenda, and that would fall under that
Okay.
category. But Joe, would you mind sending an email to DPW and to me?
I will do that.
Wonderful, thank you very much, and I'm sorry that
That's quite all right.
catch you earlier. Okay. Having no comments on the maple tree corner of Arbella and Pleasant. May I have
we approve the removal of the 18-inch sugar maple on the corner of Arbella and Pleasant Street Extension.
Second.
Okay, moved by Ann, seconded by Kathy. Roll call vote, Brian,
yes,
John,
yes,
Kathy,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes,
and Becky says yes. Okay, and that brings us to the 115 School Street. The big American ash, 48-inch American ash.
That's this, right?
Elm tree, thank you. Okay, comments from the board first, John?
Tom's right, it's a tough call. It looks pretty good. I guess my question would be, and I'd ask, well, can I ask Tom? I'm just wondering, I'm looking at the picture, wires are going all through it. All this is a pretty significant tree and those limbs look pretty robust. Is this in any way interfering with any of the lines that are going through the street at that point?
They've, over the years, pruned sort of a window through that tree.
I can see.
Elm is very strong when it's live and healthy. I've never seen really Are you concerned about something tearing out of the tree?
Yeah, I'm
Coming
concerned
over?
about limbs coming down, but
Yeah.
yeah, looking at the tree, these limbs are pretty solid.
Yeah. Very healthy tree
Okay,
at this time. That doesn't
Yes.
mean with elms, I'm sure you're all aware what can occur with elms in one season, but 5 years ago, I put a reflector plate on it. The problem was it was getting hit by snow plows and gouging and repeatedly callousing over on that side of the street, but it hasn't been struck in 5 years, so I did go up and put that, you see the big yellow reflectors there, they're aware of it now, the contractors and.
follow-up question to that. Has it been struck by a car? I mean, we all go by that tree a lot and it is right on the street. And I don't know.
Robert
Can you
Emmons, I
comment?
live at 115 School Street.
Yes.
And I lived in Gloucester for 5.5 years, but moved back about 3 years ago to that address. And anecdotally, I'm not aware of there ever being
I mean, it would have had a public safety concern in that regard, because it is right on the street. I can understand plows perhaps they're trying to get as close to the street edge as they can, but.
Debbie, were you able to get his name?
No, I didn't get his last name.
Okay,
EMMONS.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Kathy?
Just question about whether or not the tree is interfering with utilities or sewer, and it's pretty
That's
big.
what- Nate?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, we're doing a pretty significant amount of paving, both to the roadway and to the sidewalk, to the tune of about $1 million. You can see from, what's existing out there that, it has kind of heaved the sidewalk and asphalt in over there. That would certainly happen again in the future. It always has the potential to get into the sewer, roots migrate. It's exactly what happened to the sewer service at Seaside 1 with the tree that was out front. In the short term, it's not gonna do anything, but longer term, it could have an impact on our sewer, and it will certainly have an impact on, the new paving we do in years to come.
Ann?
I think cutting down 48-inch elm to make it more convenient to put in a sidewalk is not the sort of thing Tree City does. My only.
Brian?
I don't know if this tree has survived the number of plow hits, I don't want to be the one to take it down. If it survived the number of hits, then God bless it, let it stay.
Thank you. I, as you all know, I love trees, so I am very, well, maybe not everybody, but you do. Anyway, and I just makes me think of the song, Pave Paradise, Put Up a Parking Lot. Yes, that's telling you how old I might be. But, Peggy Smith. Anyway, I just think that, and Tom said what a wonderful tree it was as well. And I think that we need to make sidewalks and roads and power lines go around the tree and not the tree be cut down for our own ease of work. And I'm not saying that in any way DPW is trying to make it easier on themselves. You all have an incredibly difficult job for many reasons. And so I'm not in any way implying that. I just think it's a big broad picture for us to look at. Yes, Tom?
Another thing about the tree, it's as close as you could estimate. We think it's one of the original trees that will line School Street from the center of town all the way up. When a tree reaches that age, its whole process is slowing down. I'm sure if we were to take a coring of it, we would see that the last annual rings are so small you can't even read them. So that tree may have another 50 years of very slow growth as far as upheaval of the pavement. That what's been done has been done. There's no real rapid growth now in the roots coming up. It's known to be that way. I'm just a value. I have my personal feeling on a tree like that. It's the last or the nicest tree left in the town of Manchester. It just doesn't make sense. Like, take that down when we can adjust the sidewalk. There appears to be plenty of room. It looks like the sidewalk also in that area has been adjusted in the past. On the next property going out, gigged in a little 2 or 3 feet. We have telephone poles, hydrants sticking out into the street all over the town of Manchester. Take a magnificent tree down there. It's just no community, especially Manchester, should be considered taking that down for the sake of it. Even if we have to spend a couple, $2,000 or $3,000 more on adjustments to this, I don't know what the cost of that is. I can see where they're coming from, but at its stage in its life, in my opinion, it warrants to try and do everything we can to save it. Not-
And you've been here a long time and we know you to be very fair when it comes to trees, whether they're healthy, not healthy, and your opinion carries a lot of weight with it.
I have a question for the DPW. I understand there was some concern about growth into other areas, but it sounds like that's not likely to happen given the age of the tree. But if you were concerned about it getting entangled more in sewer lines or something like that, is there something preventative that could be done while you have the roads opened up? You know, is there a question of spending a few more dollars preventatively so that the tree can have as long a life as possible?
Yeah, for the sewer, you can definitely go in and, you know, we wouldn't even have to tear anything up. We can access from the manholes and you can essentially, if we see that roots are starting to come in, you know, you can cut them out. Sometimes depending, you can do a prohibitive spray on the roots, you know, so they don't grow in. You know, I think more immediate, it would be on the sidewalk in that area, just because, you know, everything's going to continue. The roots is really, so, you know, depending on when we strip back that sidewalk, what it looks like, you know, you might have to, which we've done in other areas, grind down the roots just to make sure that we can, you know, for at least the short term, we can have a, you know, a sidewalk in that area that is in good condition.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. Are there any comments from anybody else from the public attending the meeting?
I'm Jody Morse, 11 Jersey Lane. So I'm here as another tree lover. Common with Becky. I'm also here on behalf of the Friends of Manchester Trees, which I am the president of this wonderful organization. To me, this tree is a poster child for why we have a tree policy, town tree policy here in Manchester. The norm is to not take down trees on streets, and certainly not to take down what we would consider a heritage tree. I think Tom told me that this tree could be been planted before the Civil War. And the benefit that this tree gives to the town in terms of cleaning our air, shading our streets, you can't replace a tree like that. So I think that I'm hearing that is the feeling of the select board. I'm glad to hear that, but I think it's important for us to remember that all of our large trees, and they're called, you know, shade trees, are important to the town. We plant a lot of new trees as an organization. We planted 23 last weekend with Tom's help, and that's important. But these little trees, they're important. But when you have a tree this size, you would have to plant 20 of these little trees to even start to make a dent in removing a tree of that value, ecologically and climate change wise, and just beauty. So I just wanted to underscore that I'm glad to hear that people recognize that.
It would be nice to have a mention in the cricket about our potentially pre-Civil War tree.
We have
Jane.
Sandy with her hand up.
Okay, well, Jan, I'll go. Sandy, I'll be right with you. Jan, name and address, please.
Yes, Jan Eschozier. The last name is spelled ESCH. AUCIER. 33 Union Street. I just wanted to add a little bit to what Jody was talking about. The value of a tree that age is, as she said, it cannot be replaced by smaller trees. And in fact, a tree in that position stood a very small chance of surviving, frankly. I mean, as he said, it's been hit 4 times by a plow. It gets salt on it. It gets, peed on by dogs. I mean, so there's a multitude of reasons why when you have a tree that age, it is really worth preserving. I don't mean to come across as any tree hugger, but honestly, the benefits to the city. Now, many towns are doing studies where they trace the heat that's actually taken up by some of these trees. So I'm in favor of keeping it.
Thank you. Sandy, your name and address, please.
Yes, thank you. Sandy Rogers, 82 Old Essex Road. I wanted to put in a comment that I agree that we should be keeping this tree for a whole host of reasons. It is majestic and it really does contribute to so many good things for our town and health. I just also wanted to add that I was told once that on a street where we had parking jutting out, it actually slows traffic down. This is where we're coming off of a stop sign. I think that people are going a bit slower there, which I hope has helped save it and will save it in the future. But something to think about is that people are cautious and they don't just take off after that intersection. So it actually may be helping our traffic pattern. I also just wanted to make a point that I did not know about this tree hearing until today because someone sent me an email. And for future tree hearings, it would be good to have more notice and also something more overt on our own town website. So something to consider going forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Mr. Emmons, did you have any other comments to make?
Yeah, in fact, ties in with that is that I was out on the sidewalk and happened to notice the notice nailed to the tree. And the whole reason I came down here was to find what the impetus for removing it might be, because I believe it might have been in the 70s that a lot of trees came down on account of Dutch elm disease. And I was going to suggest that if it's not a diseased tree and there's not a truly compelling reason to yank it out of there, I wanted to stay there. After the that intersection became a four-way stop, the law of unintended consequences was people clear the clear Pleasant Street, the Pleasant Street extension outbound, and since it's a straightaway, they hit the gas, and so it's made it occasionally sketchy to pull out of my driveway, and so I like hearing from, if that was Sandy over my shoulder on the loudspeaker, that it slows traffic down. That's something I hadn't even considered, but mainly I want to say if it's not diseased, it's people aren't running into it. They're more likely to collide at that four-way intersection than banging the tree.
Thank you. Peter?
Yeah, Peter Eschozier, same last name, 33 Union Street. I have a question for Tom. Does the tree incur is there any harm done to the tree if they cut roots out of it? In other words, they excavate where the sidewalk is going and there are roots there. Does the tree incur any harm by cutting those sections out?
That's always a question. You're injuring it to a certain degree. normally a tree that's not prone to invasion of disease through its root system. We've done it around town and various other trees, playing them off a little bit. I would sort of frame away from it, if we can, as minimal. I mean, I'll be willing to come over when they want to work around the tree and watch what they're doing, and if it's done very carefully and cut off neatly, and then it will callus over. And of course,
That would be
it's
great.
too bad we couldn't get a little away from it
Mhm.
with the sidewalk. That's up to the DPW and what they can do. If they have to put pavement right up to the root flare, then they have to, but I think it will. Anything we can do to minimize any unnecessary, if it's necessary, you know where I'm coming.
So Nate, you all able to reach out to Tom when you get to that one? Yes, you do. And he has yours. Thank you. Okay, any more comments before we close the public hearing?
Just one quick comment.
Sandy?
Sandy
Bodmer.
Bodmer, 89 School Street. Seconding a lot of what's been said here, but especially what Mr. Emmons just said. That tree, 175 plus years old, it survived the Dutch elm disease, which so few trees in Canada. So please, let's have it continue to survive.
Okay, thank you. Motion to close the public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing on.
Oh, wait a minute, no, we have to vote on 115 first, sorry.
Okay,
Okay,
okay, we don't close the hearing and then vote, we vote and then close the hearing.
well, we voted on the others.
Yeah, well, I think we may have
I
made a
think we,
mistake.
yes, we should, have. You're right. Okay,
Okay, I move to close the public hearing.
You move to close the evidentiary
The
portion,
evidentiary portion.
just to be technical, sorry.
no, we need to have that, thank you.
I move to close the evidentiary portion of the public hearing on 3 trees.
Second.
Okay, friendly amendment, the 3 trees, one at 115 School Street, one at 5 Tux Point Road, and the other at the corner of Arbella and Pleasant Street Extension.
Accepted.
Thank you. Okay, moved by Ann, seconded by Kathy with a friendly amendment. Roll call vote. Brian?
Yes.
John?
Yes,
Kathy?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
And Becky says yes. Okay, now we're going to
Now.
re-vote on.
Now, I move that we agree to remove the 18-inch ash at 5 Tux Point Road.
And just go ahead and put the two
Okay,
together.
And also the tree, the 18-inch sugar maple at the corner of Arbella and Pleasant Street.
Second.
Okay, moved by Ann, seconded by Kathy. Roll call vote. Ann Harrison?
Yes.
Kathy Bellata?
Yes.
John Round?
yes,
Brian Solacey?
Yes.
And Becky Jake says yes.
I move that we deny the request to remove the tree, the 48-inch American elm at 115 School Street.
Second.
Okay, moved by Ann Harrison, seconded Kathy Bellata. Roll call vote. Ann?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
John?
yes.
Brian?
Yes.
And Becky says yes. There we go. Thank you all very much for coming.
It's a reprieve for the elm.
Yes, exactly. I saw that one. Thank you. Okay, I think that we're going to wait a little for Don. He did say he was going to be coming. I saw him a little bit ago. So it is 7:05, so we can go on to the facility plan progress. Hello, Jimmy. Thank you, Nate. Okay. So. Are you doing the presentation, Nate?
So tonight we have Tetra Tech here. They're just sitting in the other room, waiting for the tree hearings. So they should be coming in momentarily, and they have a presentation to give to you guys tonight. I think, Greg, you have that.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I did
I have
not,
to find it.
and I didn't get a chance to see that, so.
Good evening.
Did anybody else get a chance to preview that
Yes, that came out.
this afternoon? Yeah, which is usually not.
Usually not.
Here's a little handout for
Yeah.
everyone.
Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Mr. Halgren, please come in. Is Nancy with you?
She is.
Yeah.
You're not going anywhere without her.
Okay. We have a proclamation of recognition to present to you. Nancy, why don't you come up too?
Unnecessary, but.
It is absolutely necessary. Nancy? Come on up. Let's see. All right. In appreciation of over 20 years of volunteer service and dedication to the town of Manchester by the Sea, this is our certificate of appreciation. Frame it proudly.
I sure.
But in all seriousness, Don, thank you.
You're
Very
more than
much.
welcome.
Nancy, thank you.
I think it borders on 35 or 40. It's not- but The distance gets a little foggy. I mean, I am now an octogenarian, so I want to say that I recognize that there are people here that have been on boards with me and multiple boards and certainly deserve recognition.
Oh, no, Don, you deserve all of the recognition, your dedication.
Yeah.
And I know you've been, I think, on multiple boards here, but certainly on one that I've been on with the Historic Commission
4 or 5.
many times, many years, and we
Absolutely.
really appreciate the
I
service.
I appreciate the appreciation. You know,
Thank
it is
you.
part of 80% of life, they say, is showing up.
And you have.
Once in a while, say something intelligent, hopefully. It's an issue of
Well, we're fortunate. Our town has so many volunteers, as
Yeah.
I like to
Yeah.
say, but it's the ones who really put in a long term.
Yeah, it's sometimes persistence is the key in all these things. You've got to stay with it and do something for the town, and it's important. A lot of people, don't do that. I will encourage it, and it's a need, call it that. Yeah, I do too.
All right, John. give
Look
a
for
call.
wisdom.
Yeah.
Yes, we know where to go.
Well, and again, I thank you very much for the nice certificate, and it's you look at Frank.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Don. Bye, Nancy. No, I have no idea. Okay, sorry. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Nate DeRozier with DPW. With me tonight are Chris Polar and Bob Parsons with Tetra Tech. Before I hand it off to them and they'll go through this presentation that they put together, I just wanted to go through a little history on how we got to completing this facilities master plan. So back in 2018, when Chuck and I were fresh faces to town, the town completed its 2018 master plan. The handout that I've sent around are specific pages from the master plan that relate to facilities and infrastructure. Just to give you a little more of the background, where we're coming from. So the master plan goes through and uses data from a 2017 facilities master plan that indicates around $85 million, which is in 2017 dollars and pre-COVID skyrocketing in inflation that needs to be invested in the town facilities over the next 15 to 20 years timeline. And part of those pages, they go through and prioritize the facilities and looking at whether facilities need to be renovated or whether it's new facilities such as a COA or a harbor master office. One thing that the master plan does address is the issues of sea level rise. And over the last few years, DPW has undertaken some studies that I think are going to go a long way to helping us develop this new facilities master plan. So as you're aware, we're currently doing the CZM study that's looking at sea level rise for downtown, which obviously affects this town hall building, our fire department, and much of the waterfront. One of the other studies that the DPW did was doing an existing conditions assessment on all the town facilities. We received a grant from Maya to have a consultant come in, and they did a extensive tour of all of our facilities where they went through and evaluated all of the mechanical systems, the architectural systems, basically everything that encompasses our facilities, and gave them a grade. Went through and they have a very, metric that they analyze everything. They would go through and evaluate the life cycle of our various facilities and the mechanical and architectural components of those, and gave us a roadmap of maintaining our facilities and projected costs. So for example, if they went to a facility that had a new roof installed in say 2010, they would evaluate and say, asphalt shingle roofs have a lifespan of say 30 years. So in 25 years, you should start to look at, so from 2010, so in 2035, you should start to evaluate replacing that roof and put a dollar number to that, and basically did that for every single system within all the facilities to give us a really good baseline of what we're dealing with, what we're looking forward to in terms of maintenance of our facilities. So that was a big thing in developing this new building into this facilities master plan. So two of the things that we've already looked at, we have looked at a maritime visitor center or a harbor master office, which Tetra Tech actually was the consultant that helped us do that. Greg and his office have been evaluating new council on aging potential locations. And the third on that kind of list going from the master plan was looking at a DPW facility, which Tetra Tech also did doing the siting analysis. So that's, kind of giving a little bit of a history of how we've gotten to the point where we're at. And so Tetra Tech is going to walk us through looking at all the available parcels in land, parcels of land available in town. The master plan indicated that would be a very good step for any future facilities master plan to start with, and looking at, do we need to reuse our existing parcels, or are there other parcels out in town that could accommodate future public needs, and how to best go about that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris and Bob, and they're going to take you through the presentation.
Let's see, you can see this one. Okay, so I have a question. Thank you for the intro, but you've got the clicker thing. Oh, should we wait for him to come back? Hi, again, I'm Chris Kohler, and this is Bob Parthon from Tetra Tech. Thanks, Dave, again for the nice introduction, and you stole a lot of my thunder, so I guess I'll be able to go through this pretty quickly. It's a beautiful evening, and I'm sure you all want to get back out there, but feel free to interrupt at any time that you want to discuss it. Anything on the slides, or want me to back up, or whatever you'd like to do. So as Dave was saying, we're here as basically a preliminary discussion. Don't expect any conclusions tonight. We're just letting you know that we're here and what we're doing. But we're here to assess the various town departments and their current needs, assess their future needs, and once we know those needs, we can begin to explore options on how to achieve those goals and give it. I'm not going to say all, but try and get as many departments what they need. We're gonna inventory and review existing town-owned parcels. And we're gonna inventory a limited number of privately held parcels. We'll get a little bit more on that a little bit later. We'll prepare, part of our scope is to prepare conceptual designs to develop and redevelop available properties to best serve the town's needs. We'll prepare conceptual planning level costs and submit a report. So that's basically the normal flow path for a study. Next slide. Something strange in the upper right-hand corner, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That's technology that I'm not used to. So we're hoping to meet with many of the departments in town. The whole idea behind this slide is we're not operating in a vacuum. We want everybody's input, or as much input as we can possibly get. We've already met with the town manager, we've met with DPW, we've met with the police department, and we've met with planning. But you know, this is a heads up. If you get a call from us, that's probably what we're trying to set up a time that we can all sit down and talk about everybody's needs and their goals. Next slide. We're going to go through the pretty quickly. There are a lot of reports. Nate mentioned a few of those reports earlier, but there are a bunch of reports. I'm not going to go through them one by one, but we will be reviewing all of those and digesting them and summarizing them in our report. Next slide. So these are kind of the highlights of some of the bigger, I would say bigger projects, but they're also the bigger departments in town. Public Works, the initial infrastructure analysis and challenges that we're going to see. For example, Public Works has an aging infrastructure with the buildings, as Nate mentioned. They have a finite lifespan, and it's.
It was over some time ago.
I didn't want to say that, but I'm glad you did. But it's time to start thinking about replacing, if not, should have thought about it earlier. Police station, we took a tour downstairs, we met with them. There's certainly a lack of adequate space. Also, the space that they are using, some of it is in the floodplain for storage, and some of their critical infrastructure like generators and things are in the flood zone. So those are the things we're looking at. The fire department, we haven't met with the fire department yet, but we understand that they had some spatial issues as well and some infrastructure improvements that they want to pursue. The wastewater treatment plant, it's right in the floodplain, the whole thing. There's no way around it. Town hall, again, a lack of space. It's also obviously it's partially in a flood zone. Council on Aging, apparently they have no space. So we're looking for some space for them. And the library we've done some preliminary studies with them about ADA compliant bathrooms and bringing things up to code. So next slide, please, Nate. So just to quickly address flood zone and sea level, and basically there are three ways to go about addressing the rising sea levels. You can reinforce, you can reimagine, or you can retreat. I kind of like this reinforcement. You can explore walls. Think Amsterdam, think Louisiana, think Venice. Put in new walls, build a berm around the whole facility. You can reimagine, meaning you can build up. You can put all of your infrastructure, your critical components on the roof as opposed to in the basement. They learned that in New York City after their flood. Or you can retreat. And what that means is you can retreat to higher ground and rebuild in a higher elevation. So those are the things that we'll be exploring. And now we'll get to one more. Property evaluation. So what we're doing is we're evaluating, as I said, the town-owned properties,
and some other select properties. We'll use all sorts of information databases. Again, I'm not gonna go through them. Because we got some interesting stuff coming up, but yep, we can go next one. So there are 232 properties in Manchester by the Sea that are either owned by the town or the Manchester Essex Conservation Trust. And then there are a handful that are owned by some religious entities and some other, like the Housing Authority and some other departments. So if we, here's a map. You probably, I was hoping for a little bigger, but so everything in yellow is a town-owned property. Everything in green is Manchester Essex Conservation Trust. You can see as the splotches of other colors are the handful of other properties. So we'll be looking at these, and we started to eliminate properties based on accessibility. And next, so we shaded out all the properties that had no access. There's no road that can get you there. There's no way to put a road in to get to there. And you can see that dropped it down over half, I'd say. You're probably now at like 25, 30 properties. And after that one, we screened it out by conservation and open spaces. So if you go to the next one, you can see now a lot more are shaded. And now we're down to a handful of properties. And then we shaded, we blacked out. You go to the next one, Nate. The existing zoning code and where you could put some facilities. And we are literally down to five lots that are available. And they are, that big one in the upper left-hand corner is the former landfill, which we're not going to build on. So there are even fewer. You're down to 4. In the upper corner, you'll see a red or an orange dot. It's tough to see. That is what we call the School Street site. There is a cell phone tower there. It's town-owned property. And right below it, there's one other property on School Street. So those are 4 properties. And that basically, that's the rub. There's not a lot of options. So if you want to go to the next. So some considerations, like I said, there was access, there was zoning, there's sea level rise. And our job is to work through those and come up with a plan. If we were, and those properties are, if we were going to build a facility on a undeveloped site. Of course, there's redevelopment of the existing sites, like Town Hall. We wouldn't want to move it. We want to redevelop it, or at least that's the initial idea. You can probably skip ahead one more, and you could probably go another one. We probably should go to. I started touching on the potential ideas to develop School Street as a potential location for one of the town facilities. Again, we could redevelop existing properties. Some of the things that we're going to consider might require some flexibility on zoning regulations or conservation or conservation commission. We might be appealing to a lot of the boards in town if we want to develop some of these properties. There's also private properties that sometimes come up for sale. It's very rare in this community, but maybe there's a lot out there that somebody knows of. We're all looking for ideas here. If you know of a parcel that's coming up for sale, let us know. Who knows? We can look at it. Or something to consider is potential land swaps. You know, maybe town-owned property or, you know, a smaller but developable property. Somebody might be interested in that, by not just individuals, but groups or businesses might be interested in something like that. So those are the types of things. Again, we're at the early stages. We're not going to do this in vacuum. We want to hear what everybody has to say. And that's kind of what we're looking at. So trying to keep it down. I think that was our last slide. So Questions and discussion?
And
When
Yes.
you evaluated the space for for the police department, did you include the fact that they've shut down the dispatch center, giving them a room that they had used for something else that's now not used for that?
Right, well, we took a tour and we will evaluate all the space down there. I don't recall that.
The dispatch is actually on the first floor.
Yes, we went through and we took a tour of the dispatchers and I believe they're using as a conference room. Or
No, it's the next.
it's that next room off to the
Yeah.
side.
So it's,
So-
so we're still in the data gathering stages. They're
Yep.
trying to give them baseline, kind of get familiar with the town, the tours. We'll be over to fire department, at some point in the next coming weeks. So it's really, they haven't started to, develop any thoughts, beyond just kind of trying to get an understanding of where we're at. What is our baseline?
Just wanted to make sure that they had picked up on a recent change.
Yes. And, we toured the ground floor with the cells and some of the equipment that is in the HVAC and the safe the safes that are in the equipment room and things like that. I mean, it's back down there. I mean, that's what the flavor I got as I walked through. Like they're using not every square foot, they're using every cubic foot.
Yeah, they're sort of dual purposing a lot of different spaces. And so having the discussion with the chief was very, very helpful because sort of get a sense as to where they're kind of tight now and what maybe some of the future needs might be and making sure we plan accordingly. So, we're thinking about a lot of different things, but it's important for us at first to go out and understand what the current condition is. Like, is this particular facility capable of handling the existing town and what potentially could be a future need? And that would go to fire and all the other departments as well. Those are tremendous exercises for us because obviously folks in town know these facilities and what is needed much more than we do. Where we, I think, can help a lot is looking at existing space and what some of the space requirements might be. We've had an opportunity to do that for a few projects in town. We did a siting assessment for the Harbor Master, for the Maritime Visitor Center. We did an exercise at the library for compliance rooms, DPW siting assessment. So looking at these parcels, saying how can we conceptually develop these parcels to meet the demands of the department? So maybe DPW can't go on a parcel Y, but it could go to Summer Street, that type of thing. Will it work? And so that's what we're planning on doing as part of this as well, is doing that inventory, understanding needs and considering future demands. And trying to make it all work. And as Chris has said, there are limited opportunities to do that using only municipal properties, which is, how we started this whole thing. We didn't want to assume that we were going to be able to use private parcels, so the town was going to require private parcels. It's certainly in the discussion, but I'm not sure how many opportunities like that. So, starting where we are with interviews and understanding needs has been super helpful so far, and we're not done. And part of coming tonight is to sort of solicit that type of institutional knowledge that we both have that we don't. In terms of need, in terms of available parcels, in terms of things that just we haven't seen. So, and this won't be the first time or the last time. It won't be the last time.
I'll just go around to the board and see if anybody else has thoughts or questions. Kathy?
Thank you. Yes, prior to my retirement, I actually did a lot of these types of exercises in my corporate life. So one of the things we would do is, to your point, understand the current state and the fact that you're looking at the future state. Awesome. I think this board needs to understand the assumptions of the requirements that people say they need 10, 20 years from now. Because when you look at what's happening in private industry, to Ann's point, right? We decided to deliver a particular service a different way, and now the footprint for that requirement goes away. So before we get into a lot of detailed design on what the future should be from a facility standpoint, I think we need to agree on the assumptions and the requirements that would go into that analysis. Because if you look at downtown Boston, you know what? Ain't so many people in offices these days, right? So, because people work differently, and I'm curious as to how forward-looking our town hall staff is in that vein. I mean, public safety aside, there's a lot of physical aspects to the equipment they use, but there's a lot of clerical work that gets done in this building, and I'm interested in learning what they think they need for a footprint. So.
I think it's a great point. And we certainly have seen it. There's a lot of people working remote now, our offices.
Well, even if it's not remote, it's differently.
Yeah.
And you design the spaces differently
Yeah.
based on whether it's soul work, team-based, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, so this is a snapshot where you are right now. When is this report going to be finalized? It's like 2 or 3 months?
Yeah,
Something that range, yeah.
Okay, all right.
About that range. Yeah.
We're, as a board in general, we're familiar with a lot of these lists, these challenges. They've circulated around from time to time on our agendas. Are you going to provide a cost benefit analysis in terms of doing A or B or C?
That's a good question. We are going to develop a conceptual ideas and conceptual cost estimates for these buildings. We're not going to get into as much detail, I think, that a cost benefit analysis would.
Yeah, I'm not looking for detailed stuff, but,
Right. It's going to be a high level.
oh, okay. I mean, that's what we need to,
The thing we're looking for is to get an agreement on where we're going. Like, what can we move? How much space do we need? More of a high level, big picture than the nitty gritty details.
right. I mean, I'm just looking, for example, this building, and it's been talked about, ought to move the whole thing someplace. And what does that cost?
Right.
Okay, as opposed to, let's get this a little more waterproofed, if you will, and renovate it, because it's very central to the town. And what does that cost? I mean, we have to make decisions on what the benefit is, but we need some kind of handle on just what are the general costs for maybe the ideal situation versus, we can live with this.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's, I would look forward to seeing that in the final report for several of the options here, not necessarily all of them, but certainly the key ones.
Yes.
Yeah,
The big
and I
ones.
think kind of to elaborate on that, I think they're gonna give us the data and information for us to help choose our path and look to the town and to the boards to help us define where we want to go. I don't think we want to put it on Tetra Tech to, say, this is your path forward.
Right.
They're just giving us the tools essentially to help make those decisions.
And are they, how are they analyzing the life left in some of the facilities we have? And is that being done in a way to help us prioritize?
So I think that rolls back to the conditions assessment that,
Right.
DPW helped do. We certainly, that's not within their scope to go through and evaluate the buildings to that level of extent. But they can use that data and knowing, we have XYZ work coming. If we want to maintain this building for 30 years, these are the things that are going to have to be done to maintain it versus, if we look at a replacement. And I think for a lot of our facilities, it's a two-edged sword, or two things that we're looking at. It's does it meet our needs from a programmatic need?
Mhm.
Can we do everything that we need to do? Is it providing does it meet our needs in terms of meeting requirements for any of the governing, like on the PD side?
Mhm.
And then also from just the building life cycle side.
Right.
There's two very different, I think, approaches, or two different factors that will go into how we make the decision whether, we rehab the existing building or we try to look at a different path for it, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Can I ask, go to Brian? He
Oh,
hasn't
sure,
had-
absolutely.
Brian, any comments, thoughts?
No, I just think that this is a good first step to get a sense of the value and the life cycles of the existing facilities. And then it's up to us to prioritize these facilities. And I think this is this is one step closer than we were, 2 months ago. So yeah, I'm happy with where we're going, and I'm just looking forward to the journey, I guess.
Thank you.
I gotta,
Go ahead, John.
what's your experience been with private land sales to public entities? Looking at the map, I mean, a big chunk of our land is in conservation. And when you started the blank stuff, there's nothing left. We're very, very, very little that's left. And so we have to kind of look at that. And I assume that if you go that way, you start to say, oh, this looks pretty good. Let's talk to who the owner is and see what, if they're willing. See what
Two
the story
spots,
is.
Summer Street, just beyond under the train bridge.
Okay.
There are 2 spots on Summer Street.
So, yeah, and just because Chris has done some, keeping our finger on the pulse of what is currently available for sale. And internally, as properties come up, I think it's something that we can keep our eye on. And then sort of, I guess, make you aware of it and as it, as a board, or I guess as the board decide on what we're pursuing or not, and how far does it get you? Because if we can come up with a concept plan that seems to check, I don't know about all the boxes, I'd love to think we could come up with a concept that checks all the boxes, I'm not sure that's gonna be the case. Perhaps you don't have to. But just in some of the things that we've done so far, there seems to be a path that makes a lot of sense, and there's a lot more work to be done, but it's not a bad path, and so we feel comfortable that there is something. But private parcel sale, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, and to answer your question, municipalities tend to move a little slower than the private sector can. And, in a popular town such as this one, lots go very quickly, as do houses, with
Especially
sometimes
people,
multiple offers, and municipalities just can't move that fast. So
Yeah, well, I just think if a municipality looks and says, the situation is we've got to find some private land, you got to be proactive. I don't care if it's for sale. You just look at stuff that might be, geographically, this might make sense. We maybe even know, well, we probably know the homeowners. And, and propose that and say, well, we've got a challenge here, but you can help with that.
yes, we've scanned all 232 of those properties, and there are some interesting conversations we can have. I would prefer not to do it in a.
No.
But it's.
I'm gonna
There
interrupt
aren't
there for
many.
just a
There aren't
minute.
many.
For people who are sitting in and listening, when he just mentioned that we're not gonna do that in public, we do that in executive session so that we don't lose out on opportunities. There's nothing clandestine. That's what it's about. Just want to make sure everybody's clear on that. Sorry for interrupting. And go ahead. And then I'd like to go ahead and wrap. this up.
I actually am going to have 2 questions. In your introduction, there was a sketch of a DPW location, and you didn't talk about it at all. Off of School Street.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was part of our previous siting plan that we did for DPW.
Okay, fine. So this is fine. You're not
That
actually
was very
looking there in that
conceptual.
swamp.
Very
Okay.
conceptual. Yeah.
Okay, but the other is you talk about, now I've lost it, of course, flood zone. To what extent are you looking at town or harbor round flood solutions, or are you looking at solutions for individual buildings?
More individual buildings.
Good.
As opposed to the entire town.
Good, thank you.
we'll let the CZM study worry about the broader town. We'll let this study look at
Work it-
specifically our facilities.
Our facilities
Yeah.
and how they.
Stay in our lane.
Yeah.
The inundation mapping that's coming from that exercise is gonna be
Yeah.
super helpful for us, though. And like you said, each parcel, you kind of address differently. Some can't move, some can move, and some can be easily reimagined on site, so.
Yep.
Like here, this is maybe a potential possibility for reimagining. Taking different uses.
This is a building study, not a how to save the town.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe one more question,
Okay, one more.
short
question.
one. For the water issue, do you make distinctions on solutions on flood zones or episodic issues as opposed to sea level rise issues?
So I think, I think the inundation mapping not only assumes sort of static sea level rise, but
Right.
also storm surge.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say it's worst case, but it's, I think the projections are looking all the way out to 27.
Correct,
So
yes.
they're pretty,
That's the new FEMA flood map,
Yes,
so
yeah.
that's.
it's
what we have
it's
to
the
go by.
statewide model.
Yeah, you look at both hand in hand because they're both kind of different things where, when we're looking at sea level rise is going to more affect the parking lot here on a day-to-day basis than the episodic storms that are going to, but the episodic storms could have a bigger impact on, the general operation of the wastewater plant if, God forbid, we had a massive storm come in and,
Mhm.
Yes,
flooded parts of our process. That's a kind of two different things in how we look at them and how we would deal with them.
because part of the process is down below.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
you go in there, yeah.
Yeah, like we could still access that site, driving through a little bit of water, but if it's under, through the parking lot.
Fills the
but-
basement, you're
Right,
back.
exactly. So,
Okay, we do have people waiting for interviews and we've gone over about 15 minutes. So
Anybody in the audience who would like to,
I'm
you're not gonna take. public
not
comment.
gonna do that right
Okay.
now, because this isn't a public hearing, so we'll
Okay.
just. However, if people do wish to make public comment on this, please feel free to email us. And Jack, I'm not going to respond to that because I can't. It says, will any thought be given to obtaining property through use of eminent domain? That has not come up at all. So we're just gonna leave that at this point. Thank you all very much.
Yep.
Nate, thank
Thank you.
you. That's
Absolutely.
good. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what shakes out of the trees.
Agree, we'll be back.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you. Okay, we have the application for Historic District Commission. Do we have Paul? Come on in, Paul. How are you? Thank you very much for, say it again.
My.
Oh, I'm so sorry. That's horrible. It's never. Would you like to postpone this if that's, I mean. Well, thank you for coming in and I'm very sorry to hear about your father. That's never easy. Always hard. Yeah. No, we can say that. We still miss them. All right, everybody, I'm guessing had a chance to read. So, Paul, we do have your information in front of us. So what I'd like to do is just go around to the board members and let them ask questions. Brian, would you like to start?
No, you're on
Anyways.
Hilltop, Highland Ave. Is that in the historic district?
Yes.
Okay, no, I'm good.
Not in the historic district.
What?
It's out on
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought he said, was he here for the historic?
He is.
district?
No, is Highland,
Landmark.
so and John, maybe you can speak to this. What role will he be filling? Isn't there
I can speak to that. Yes, you are an architect or trained in architecture, correct?
Yes.
okay,
And I'm sorry, could you just speak up a little bit so that everybody can?
I have a master's in architecture from the University of Pennsylvania. And I moved here, New York City in 2003. Looking with off and on with my brother-in-law, Michael Gruber, on Summer Street.
Mhm.
My experience is with architecture, and I have a hobby of historical preservation. And so that's why I'm attracted to these types of properties. I'm a real history buff. That's right.
no, I have no problems with your background. I just want to make sure that the roles that we're trying to fill, he checks all the boxes. That's all. I'm good.
Thank you, Brian. John?
Yes, good. And thank you, Paul, for raising your hand. I'm aware of your name. I am a fellow member of the, not a fellow member at this point yet, but I am a member of the historic committee. And your slot has always been very difficult to fill, to find somebody with architecture background. And that is one of the slots, as you're probably aware, that we look for folks. So thank you very much. As you know, the commission is going to be undergoing a survey of historic buildings here in town. Have you done that sort of thing in the past? It sounds like
I have.
you've got the right hobby.
I've just completed my survey of my garden. We're doing a survey of the house, leave separate. But I am speaking with Peter, and he's helping with their application at the state. And I submitted that one. And I hope to, I'm going to be applying for the national registration for the garden. I believe it's important, it's very important garden. Locally, and that I'll be applying for that.
So you're kind of familiar with some of these processes. And that will be very, very helpful to the commission as we undertake this survey. So
it's an exciting project.
Great, yes.
It really is. I'm excited because it's a very vital thing for the town to have an inventory. It's so important, culturally important.
A lot of historic houses here.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Thank you, John. Kathy?
Well, I was gonna ask, kind of answered it already, but maybe there's something else. I was gonna ask, is there anything specific you'd like to accomplish as a member of the commission? It sounds like the survey is at the top of your list. Was there anything else that you'd like to accomplish as a member of the commission?
Well, I mean, primarily it's just to discover and make sure we make the preliminary list, and then really, because a lot of these sites are in danger of being lost because of neglect. Because we don't know where they are, what their importance is, and it's so vital to the community that I feel it's so important. Whether you're talking about international or local properties, and I think particularly this particular area has a significance, I think national, not only local, national, just because of the history. I mean, I'm from New York City, so I came and I fell in love with history of the area. So.
Thank you.
And my only question is, do you have any time constraints?
I don't. I have two kids, 11 and 10 almost. But I do. I'm in real estate. I have my license in real estate, and I'm doing that part-time. And I'm also an architect, designer, and an artist part-time. So I
other projects, I have projects I like to do. I don't have a particular suppose, job that you would consider full-time, but I like to do these projects. It's important.
Okay. Any other questions?
Move to approve the application of Paul Strempel to join the Historic District Commission.
Second,
And may I just ask, how long is this for, this particular?
good question.
Okay.
3 years.
So for 3 years, is it, and so through 26, you go into, okay. Right, friendly amendment,
For the term ending in 2026.
thank you. Moved by Ann, seconded by John, roll call vote, Brian,
Yes,
Don,
Yes,
Kathy, yes, Ann,
Yes,
and Becky says yes. Thank you very much and welcome aboard.
the town is fortunate.
yes.
We are,
Thank you very much.
and
Paul.
my sympathy.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So,
Thank you for coming in. We're sorry that it's been a hard time.
Yeah. He's, my mother is, I'm also helping my mother with her property in Pennsylvania. She had a place in efforts to, to try to help her get reorganized and thing. So becoming a living permanently here. For the next few months. The next month or so, because you have to go back and sell the property. After that, then get her settled here. Move back to me.
A lot on your mind right now.
yes,
Dad was a veteran. He was a surgeon in one of those MASH units in Vietnam.
oh boy,
No,
So, yeah.
holy smokes,
stories.
nightmares. So, well, thank you all very much.
Thank you
Thank
Good
you.
luck with everything. Okay, Harbor Advisory Committee, next up, Jimmy Doucette. How are you tonight?
Mhm.
Things are well.
Good.
Well. Took advantage of his medical expertise.
Yeah.
So thank you. Just happy I didn't run out of supplies. Yes, I went through a few vendors.
Right. Well, we've read our information and so we'll start. Brian Solacey, any questions for?
no, I'm good. No, I'm good with Mr. Doucette.
John?
Jim's a known quantity here. That can work both ways, by the way.
Yes, it can.
This is a positive.
I agree.
So, and you're the right guy for the role that the Harbor.
Well, glad you did. Thank you.
Advisory.
Kathy?
Forward to having you join the ranks of town
I
government
look-
in a
I look
different way,
forward to
Jim.
helping and Contributing.
No, I have no questions.
And
No questions at all.
my only question, time constraints.
Not terrible. My kids are all grown, so. Yep. 4 years left at fire department, so I'll be around. I'm planning on staying around for a long time, so, my schedule is actually freed up in the last few years, but I must admit, my oldest Will is due and his wife is due in 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting.
My good friend Hillary is due in June.
No.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be a grandfather.
Oh my gosh, so you.
It'll take me a little bit, but not like this big. It's only when they get to be enough.
Well, then you'll take them out on the boat with you, right?
But anyways, I was approached by Bion and also by Dan Lane. And I know that Dan Gray also was involved. He's just interested in having somebody. I do have my commercial lobster license. I have a lobster boat fishing where my days off from 200 to 300 traps. So I'm pretty busy. I'm out there quite a bit. I'm not the high roller, but I do work hard. My son Henry's out there too. So
Oh, nice.
just interested in seeing that what Bion's, I mean, he's done a great job for us.
He has.
Made a lot of good decisions, a lot of good good progress with what we're doing, and I just want to make sure that we continue the right path and help, it's important to advocate for Harbor and commercial, recreational, bringing people into the town, and taking care of it, the dredging, all the different aspects.
And representing the commercial aspect. That's,
Yeah,
you know,
well, that's
we need
important
that.
to me
It's
too,
very
but I
important.
think it's bigger than it
Mhm.
is. I mean, being a coastal community and, I had this whole speech, but, I grew up, I had a little skip back here when I was a kid and, go out to Sand Dollar Cove and good water skiing.
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't have to worry about moorings and 200 boats, but, so yeah, it's just, I think it's important, something, not only with what I'm doing here, but get back, maybe get outside of what I'm doing. I'm interested in maybe starting learning about what goes on there.
Wonderful. Well, thank
Help
you
out a
very
little
much.
bit,
No,
That's it for me. So,
wonderful.
good.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for?
I move that we accept the application of James Doucette to join the Harbor Advisory Committee for the term ending in 2026.
Second,
Okay, moved by Ann Harrison, seconded by John Round. Roll call vote. Ann?
Yes.
Kathy? Yes. John?
yes.
Brian?
Yes,
And Becky Jake says appreciative and enthusiastically, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Great.
very much, Jimmy. Say hi to-
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I guess the town is fortunate to have people like you who step up for jobs like this.
Yeah.
I said, my schedule's getting a little slow. I
Well,
need a little more time.
It's a critical committee, so I
Well,
think that, thank you.
Tips are done and all this, it's important and.
Yep.
I think I picked it up, I read it, maybe it was in the town before, about how many people want to.
Oh, yeah.
People step up and that's what makes the wheels change, so we need a lot of it.
Absolutely. Right.
Well,
Thank
for your
you.
time.
Say hi to
Yep.
Susan.
I will.
And,
All right. You
2
guys have a
weeks.
Good evening, thanks for all your hard work.
thank you,
Anything else, give
Jimmy.
me a call.
You're right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Okay.
Can I just put in something relative to town committee volunteers? It would be easier for me if the name were at the top rather than 2/3 of the way down in the application,
Yeah,
on the form.
yeah, you're right.
And we used to have the duration. And so in other words, 3 years to end the end of June or whatever. So
Yeah,
that if we could
I was
get,
just gonna ask about that, because we just said 2026. Is it
No, I had
2025? Is he filling a slot vacated by Dan?
Dan,
Ray?
that's
So
right.
that it-
Yeah, so-
Expire June 2025, do we need to?
Sure, yes.
we need to amend that, so.
I amend my previous motion to make the term end in 2025.
June, into June.
They all end at the end of June.
Well, that might be the case,
Second.
but not everybody knows. All right, roll call vote moved by Ann, seconded by Kathy. Brian,
yeah, sure, yes.
John,
Yes.
Kathy? Yes. Ann?
Yes.
Becky? Yes. All right,
Just a question that Ann had raised with regard to difficulty finding information on the form. Was the name put down below because you want to see the qualifications first blinded?
No, that's a good point.
You know, because I'm wondering, that's just not the way people think.
That's a really good.
And the reason that the name was put down there, I thought, was probably because, oh, what are the qualifications? And so you react to that before you say, oh, I know this guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Or I don't.
But knowing the guy is also important.
It is.
And
You're gonna know that person anyway. It's not like that's blinded forever. It's blinded for 10 seconds. So in this instance, I would agree with Ann that regardless of what the purpose was, it doesn't really serve any purpose because you know everything.
okay. Early voting discussion with Board of Registrars.
yes.
So, what do we have on with this?
So I don't believe we have any registrar, board of registrars members with us this evening.
Well, there's really not much.
They're not able to join us.
Okay.
But certainly at a future date, we can have the discussion. So at this point in time, because the registrars voted not to go forward, the law is written that you can consider in-person voting if the majority of the registrars say yes. So it starts with them.
So it's, yeah, it's
And
done.
in the future, it makes sense to have a conversation with them prior to them voting, so that we
Yeah.
can have that conversation.
Well, and as you said, get the information first. Let's, try to, which we can't really do until we have early voting to assess.
Yeah, so I think that, so the concern I have is we don't have any good data as to how many people took
Mhm.
advantage of early voting the last time it was in process. So so it's too late for this election. We can't do anything about this election. The next election that the Board of Registrars would vote on, would that be the state elect primary in the state primary or?
Well, so the state elections are different. Those are
Okay.
automatic early voting.
Automatic, so the state has automatic early voting.
It's the local
Okay.
that you have the choice, I believe.
Okay.
I think I
Can we
have that
take
right.
advantage of the state early voting to get some
We can get
data?
some data, yes.
Okay, and I'd like to make sure we do that.
Yep.
For whatever reason, there seems to be a little bit of a operational lapse coming from this area. It's not the first time. Okay, and we need that data, so I'd like to make sure it happens.
Do you want that as an action
Yes,
item?
yes, could we put the,
Okay.
thank you very much,
Wow.
Becky, what a great idea. And so I don't know when the Board of Registrars, actually, there's no voting that's required, right, to get, what's required, what should the action entail?
May I?
So-
Yes,
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
That, since there will be early voting for the next state election, that our action item is a month before the next state election, we underline that we want this data collected. And I don't know when the next state election is, so I'm kind
So
of.
it'll be the presidential primary, won't it?
Oh,
nothing, and,
Right?
oh, because we just had the
We just had
2
the
year.
two
like,
year.
it's
So
like
won't be
September.
nothing until next year.
So I think we have a whole year. So the primary,
This is election. I mean, this whole situation with the school budget, does that fall into this category at all, or is that strictly a town meeting sort of thing?
well, we have the
We
ballot,
have-
we have the
we don't know
ballot
what's gonna happen.
coming up.
If we have to go back to that.
Okay, I'm
Well,
just
we can't do anything about the
looking
ballot.
at various voting events. I have a follow-up question. Are we
Well,
tracking?
I'll have to check on
Okay,
dates.
are we also tracking absentee ballots, mail-in ballots?
Oh, yes.
That's fine. So those data are there.
Yes, that data is there, which is good, but the
Okay.
early voting, because I have taken advantage of it personally, and I'm not the only one. I see people walking out as I walk in, and so I know people are doing it, but there you go. I just
So
don't
we're
know.
actually having quite a few people coming in. So even though technically we don't have in-person voting, we do have absentee voting now and requests for mail-in.
Right.
So a lot of absentee voters are coming in and voting as if it was in.
As if it was, yeah.
And I just did today.
Yeah,
So it was,
just upon request, we don't, if you want it, you got it.
So
The difference is we might have different hours.
there could be different.
Right, yes,
Mhm.
yes. Because
So-
the absentee voting is only during normal town hall hours, is that,
Right, unless you can request via mail.
right, that's the mail-in vote.
okay, so that action item.
So just to underscore, so the election day is May 16th. The last day to request a mail-in ballot
Mhm.
is May 9th. But you can do in-person absentee balloting up until noon on the 15th.
And we make it really
Lots of dates.
easy, don't we?
May 9th is the last day to request a mail-in ballot.
And last day to register,
Last day to register is May 6th. Should have started with that. So May 6th is the last day to register. And then May 9th is the last day to request a mail-in ballot. you have up until noon time on May 15th to come in and have an absentee ballot and fill that out. And then May 16th is all-day balloting, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
And Tiffany's gonna put this list up on the
Yep,
website.
we'll have her get that up.
Tomorrow.
So yes.
Okay. Any further comments on that? Brian?
No, I'm good. I think we've got it covered. Yeah. No, I'm good.
So just follow up. So are the registrars gonna come at the next meeting, or they're not gonna come at all, or what?
We'll have them a month prior to the next election.
All right.
Or prior to when they have to vote on whatever.
Yes.
they have.
Yeah, so it's not too
yes.
late again.
Okay, so,
So prior to the next cycle, we'll make sure that they are in before they make a vote.
all right, so should we have a little stickler on that one?
Let's add it to the action item.
All right,
And,
okay, thank you.
we don't have a precise date yet, but we'll figure that out.
Okay, next up, fire department discussion. Wait a minute, yes, okay, got up a little time. All right, regarding the staffing update.
So I think it's fair to say that emotions are running a little high in terms of just some anxiousness about what the staffing is and where it's going. But it is moving in a very good direction. So, you know, today we have 11 fully trained firefighters and paramedics. And in addition to that, there are 2 who are fully trained paramedics who are currently in the full-time academy. So they'll be finished with their full-time academy training by the second week of July.
How many is that? 3 or 2? 3?
That's 2.
But it's 2.
2. We had, it was a group of 3, but one declined to keep going forward. Decided that he really just wanted to be a paramedic and did not want to be a paramedic firefighter. So we hired 3 in the fall because in the summer we had a retirement and one person leave, and then we had a new slot for this year. So we budgeted for 13 this year. I'm sorry, 14.
Now we only got 13.
And we have 13, and then we're hiring a new person come early June.
Plus the 2 that we voted upon.
Correct. So that second set of 2 will be a new hire that'll bring us to 16. So it does, depending on their qualifications, it may take time to get them fully qualified. And that's where some of this rub is, right? So there's a delay when a person is brought on, and depending on their qualifications, whether or not they're able to be a fully engaged firefighter paramedic.
Which, as we've discussed before, is, you know, you don't typically get that right out of the.
So up until, you know, 2 years ago, 12 was always our maximum. That was our maximum for more than a decade. That's what we always had. So come early July, we will be up to 13 fully trained. And with a 14th on board, and depending on their qualifications, when they'll be fully up and running.
Just a question. When we had the 12, then overtime played a big role in all of this all the time. Because the number of shifts didn't change. It's always been whatever the number of shifts are.
Right.
But, okay.
You also had more
So-
volunteers.
All
Way back
volunteers.
when.
And then we had a volunteer.
Volunteers, okay, understand.
So for the rest of this year, almost $100,000 of additional monies were put into the fire department budget to allow for that needed overtime because of the new hires not being fully trained. That gets us through the rest of this year with that minimum of 3 staffing. on every shift, which has been the norm for the last 15 years.
Through the fiscal year,
I'm sorry,
through the fiscal year.
through this fiscal year, yeah, through the end of June. And then the new fiscal year kicks in, we'll have a 2-week period where we'll struggle for one of the shifts. To have that third person always on.
Mhm.
So there will be some need for some overtime during that 2-week period. But in a 2-week period, you do 2 rotations, so it's like 4 days of overtime. So that's where basic staffing lies. So again, a lot of comments, a lot of concerns expressed. I mean, emotions run high because on both sides, right? I mean, labor and management, we're trying to work, make sure we get this together. Happen to have an all-male crew, so the guys are passionate about what they do and they want to make sure they can deliver the best service that they can. So I get the passion, I get the concern. On sort of management side, I think we are making good progress. We've increased the budget, we're increasing the number of staff. And this time next year, we should have 16 fully trained, fully qualified EMT firefighters, which is 33% more than what we used to have. So that's a significant increase in an important upgrade in the service. So I know it doesn't happen overnight, and that would be ideal if we could. It does take a little time in this transition, but we're making good progress. So that's the sort of frontline staff. So as you know, Chief Cleary has decided not to enter into a new 3-year contract. So he's decided to relocate to Maine, will be close to the family.
He's been commuting for a long time. I mean, he's
Well, he moved to Gloucester.
Yeah.
So,
But I mean, going back to visit family.
yeah. So that leaves a vacancy in the chief position. Typically, we take a look for in-house candidates to see if we have a qualified candidate that we feel can do the job for us and move forward. So we'll be posting that at the station as a vacancy and solicit any interest for any in-house staff. If that doesn't materialize, then we would most likely bring on board an interim and then go through an outside search, expand the search and seek resumes from folks outside of town to do that. That can take 6 months to play out.
Do we have specific characteristics if we have to go outside? Do we have specific characteristics we're looking for beyond the minimal character qualifications?
So the job description has those qualifications that
Yeah.
are desired. So beyond that,
What I'm
No.
suggesting is that many of the recent chiefs have been at the end of their careers or beyond. And
so I think what would be helpful, I would like to do it with the fire staff
yes,
and also with you, have a discussion about what type of person you feel would be a good fit for the town. I think that's a worthwhile exercise that we do regardless if internal or external. So I think that's a good exercise that we should plan on doing in the next few weeks.
I was going to say sooner than
Yes,
later.
yes.
So.
Question,
Good.
yeah. Do we know how difficult the search that might be? I know the difficulties of just trying to get line firefighters is
So hiring right now is a real challenge.
at any
Positions-
level.
At any level. Positions are going vacant.
Okay.
Across the board, across multiple departments. So it's not an easy time to be hiring.
but we might consider hiring somebody who was an assistant chief
Yes,
and has never
Deputy
been
chief,
chief.
right.
yeah, someone who's has some
Looking-
real potential.
Right.
And working to move up and to take on their first assignment, that's a possibility, absolutely.
And they can get training. I mean, they can come into a position and supplement their
Yes,
training.
yes,
Right,
if somebody
so-
who doesn't check off all the
Right.
boxes, that would be ideal.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
So the only, I like everything I'm hearing, except for the delay, of course, but there's nothing we can do about that. But if we were a private company, what we would be doing right now is, because of the difficulty in filling positions, we would, whatever techniques we were going to use, we would do it in parallel. Okay, so I thought I heard you say we're going to do the posting internal, and then if no one
Oh,
comes.
yeah,
forward,
we could
I
do
would
that
say we need to do
simultaneously.
everything all at once. This is a war for talent, is
Yeah.
what we used to call it,
Yeah.
and it does not hurt to cover all of our bases
Yeah.
simultaneously.
Right.
I think I really like what Ann said about the, making sure we're clear and about what we're looking for in our next chief. I do think I personally haven't seen a whole lot of progress on the topic of succession planning, so that we don't get into these holes quite as frequently as we seem to. So, we've done great work on the police side. I think there's some clear succession planning going on there. Haven't really seen that at all on the fire side. So I don't want this exercise just to be about hiring a chief. It should be about hiring a chief and making
Setting
sure
up
we
a
have
hierarchy.
clear succession plan so that we don't run into this.
And that's
confuse.
what we need to
Right.
do in general across. the board.
Exactly.
So it's,
But especially with
In
this
many
position, it
ways.
seems to be
Yes.
highly sensitive because
Yeah.
it's been happening repeatedly, based on my observation.
Well, I think this position maybe self-selects a little bit, to Ann's comment a little bit earlier. Folks that have come in have been kind of at the end of their career. And I mean, we're a small town.
right.
As somebody comes in here and they're at a certain point in their career at the end, or maybe as was earlier mentioned, I want to be a chief someplace, but that person is not going to stick around very long. They will go to a larger town if they're, still have another 20 years to
But-
run.
I think, personally, I think we're better off with somebody who's ambitious,
Yes.
even if we only keep him for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that will, he will be in a position to change the atmosphere. And I think at the same time, we need to think seriously about changing the hierarchy, which is very flat, and nobody in the fire department, there isn't an assistant who can be obviously brought forward.
But wasn't there something that Chief Clary, about the hierarchy that he didn't want?
Well, so when the
Implemented.
captain left, so we have 4 crews. And historically, one of those crews was supervised by a captain and the other 3 crews by lieutenants. And so when the captain retired, the chief felt it was best to have 4 lieutenants rather than 3 plus a captain. Because when you're in charge of a crew, they were all at the same level. And I think it felt odd to him to have 1 crew have a captain and the other 3 have lieutenants.
Does that captain have different responsibilities in theory, or is it just a rank?
Well, there was some additional responsibilities, fire prevention responsibilities. But again, we didn't have anyone in-house who had those fire inspection credentials. So there are a number who are working on that now, which is good. So,
But as we're building our budget for next year, we ought to consider having an assistant
A
chief,
deputy chief.
a deputy
I mean,
chief.
certainly there's a strong interest in that.
Yeah.
In the department, and I think it is consistent with some of the conversations that you've had as well.
Okay,
So are we going to start doing a search in parallel immediately, or do we have time to refine the profile? Or shall we refine the profile?
I think we should.
Well, I think, again, I think we can do them both. Start the external search and internal search, but also start the discussion of qualifications.
Yeah, if you're
I mean, we're
going,
just collecting resumes for
right,
now.
right.
Mhm.
But if you're paying somebody to bring you resumes, it'd be nice if they knew what we wanted.
Right,
Yeah, okay, fair enough. So we can. Meet again.
right. And
We could,
it's,
we could do a special meeting and invite the firefighters and have that conversation all at once.
That sounds good. I
Yeah.
just think it. I feel like we've been talking about this for weeks and I'd like to
well,
get started on it.
Weeks is just,
Yeah, I mean, as far as the succession planning and the role of the deputy chief, I don't know. I'd like us to get moving, I guess is my.
all right, so the next step, we will, I guess the next step would be to reach out to the fire department and, see if they might be amenable to that, to a meeting. And then we go from there in terms of trying to find a date. And we used to have our Thursdays set aside, some of the Thursdays for special meetings. Maybe we can do that again. Although I know we have some coming up.
Yeah, we talked about the 25th as the governance project.
Right.
So the next steps, but
Perhaps we could.
this coming Thursday is not, does not.
No,
look
no,
good.
no, no, we're talking about the 25th is what we were.
Yeah, but that's.
But I think the first step would be to reach out to the fire department and see if they would be amenable to that.
I would suggest if they are amenable, that waiting until the 25th to figure out what the qualification should be is too late.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, I
3
agree.
weeks out. And I understand this Thursday is not an option.
Well, also, yeah.
But to wait 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks.
if we can do something next week, perhaps.
I would
That's what I'll
say
be
whoever
for.
can make it,
Yeah,
and provide feedback by email if you can't, but let's pick a date
The Thursday, the 11th.
and let's get it done.
if they're willing to do
Yep.
that.
Yeah, and if
So-
not, we may need to meet on our own, but
We set it up and as many people who can come.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
And as you say, people can send in written comments.
Right.
Yeah, if you send out to us, Greg, a draft,
mhm,
right, of what the current position
Yeah.
description looks like, right? You take that action and then we can either show up to the meeting or
Absolutely.
send feedback in writing.
good, okay.
No. We have to be careful about having a quorum.
You mean,
We can do a special meeting. We can set
Oh,
up a
yeah,
meeting.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
but if we don't have a quorum, if we send in our thoughts
Oh,
and then don't show up, then,
you need to make sure you have a quorum.
okay.
Something I was just going to say about that. Darn it, oh well. Brian, thoughts?
I'll be there. I can make it. I think it's a great idea.
This is the 11th.
Yes. I will send
I can,
it.
I'll pencil that in.
Okay, tons, put it in, ink it in. Okay,
To try to make sure the lines of communication are as open as they can be.
yes,
And sort of clear some misunderstandings that seem to be out there.
Yeah.
So I'm scheduled to sit down with two of the union folks on Wednesday at 10:30. And I think it might be helpful to have one of you join me.
Kathy is,
Maybe.
I can't.
Kathy will be here for that.
So I think that'll be another good step.
Mhm.
Will that meeting be here or at the fire
Yeah.
station? Here? Okay.
Now let me double check with them.
Okay.
Okay, are we on the apparatus plan?
Sure, yes. Not much to say because we'll save for
Right.
the discussion
When-
for the 15th, your meeting on the 15th. The chief wasn't able to come tonight. He had a prior engagement. But again, it's worth emphasizing that we have a fleet schedule. Nothing was slated to be replaced this year. We've run into some challenges with the ladder truck in terms of its emissions, passing emissions. The folks who did the last repair did come back and they discovered that there was a problem that they had overlooked. One of the cylinders was not wired up correctly. So that, and it barely failed. So we're optimistic, keeping the fingers crossed, that by correcting this last problem, we'll get this ladder truck back on the road being inspected.
How does that change the information that was in our package? If I read the graphic correctly, the red cells were the date by when we were supposed to buy something new, purchase something new.
Yeah.
So according to this, the ladder truck were due to buy one in fiscal year 24 anyway.
Well, so that moved up. It was originally going to be 25. I think 25 or 26. One of the challenges we have now is there's 2-year lag time.
Well, so that's what I was gonna
Between
ask,
order and delivery.
because what I was gonna
So-
suggest is it would be nice to understand what's the real end of life date, and then show in a different color, blue or something, okay, we have to order it and put a deposit
Yeah.
on this year. And that way I think it's a little clearer
Yeah,
as to what
that
we need
makes
to know.
sense.
That would be helpful.
And there were
But it's a good
equipment
shot,
moving around too.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd hear that we want to. Or Tom moved to surplus one thing, then it needed to come out of surplus and something else had to go. So we were having not clear messages given to us regarding
Right.
equipment and what was or wasn't needed, what was or wasn't actually surplus.
Right, and that's why I like this chart. Everything is on one page.
Yeah.
It's all, this is nice. Thank you.
Right.
Okay,
So
but let's fine tune it.
Yeah.
And we'll have that ready for you for the 15th.
Okay.
And then hopefully, so when will we hear back on whether our finger crossing has worked?
Within the next couple of weeks, yes. I'm hoping by the 15th.
Okay. Have we looked at buying a used truck or a demonstrator or?
Yes, they've been exploring that. Because obviously delivery time on that is much quicker.
Yes. But what are the pros and cons of doing that? And how do we?
Well, it's the end of the use, how much life can we get, how
Right,
long is it?
But if the current ladder truck was a demonstrator,
Mhm.
so we didn't get to specify all of the details. But we got a truck quickly.
Well, if this truck passes the emissions test, then the date gets pushed out and you just made another assumptive date?
Well,
Or is there a drop dead date?
the thinking is to go ahead
Mhm.
because of that 2-year lag time.
Right.
So go ahead and put the purchase order, get the money appropriated, perhaps at a fall town meeting. So we have the money set aside.
I know. It's
At least,
Right.
most of it if it's new. If it's a brand new, it may not quite cover it. But it's close.
But that's assuming that this truck would then be retired in 2 or 3 years? Or is that,
Yes.
would it go another 2 or 3 years? Or are we just
Well, we should wait for the chief
So-
for that.
Right.
I mean, I
playing with
think
fire
that's.
on that?
So
Okay.
the goal was to have it for 25 years.
Okay, so that's just
It's
a,
22 years old now.
that's just a set date, yeah.
So then you might want to update this. It says useful life of 20 years.
So different chiefs have had different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
yeah,
it was about
whatever,
20
it
or
should
25.
reflect whatever data we need to make the decisions. I'll say it that way.
There are other considerations. Do we need our own ladder truck? Could we enter into a regional agreement And before we put a deposit down on something, we probably ought to investigate that.
Well, yes, and in addition to that, I think we need to ask people. You know, this is, and I agree with the financial look at that, and as well as exploring the regionalization, but I also wonder if there would be a strong impetus in town for people to say, no, we want our own ladder truck right here.
I think the concept of sharing a physical asset is really different than a virtual one. So, you know, the regionalization of services, it's easier to do it when you're talking about something a little more virtual than a physical asset. So I think some questions that would come up is, okay, if it's a regional truck, where
do
does
you
it
keep
sit?
Right.
And who gets to babysit the truck
Yeah.
this week? You know, that type of service can be achieved. It adds other complexities that, you know, we'd really need to think through.
Well, to Ann's point, you could take that one step further and just contract with neighboring towns and say, here's the deal with regard to your ladder truck responding to whenever there are needs, which I know are pretty
Well, I think
rare.
they do anyway. I mean, mutual aid.
Well,
right? Mutual aid
in
is-
general, they do. And, you know, to your point there, if you're sharing something, what's the difference between if the truck's sitting in the other town's garage?
Response time.
There you're dealing with the
exactly.
same time.
Well, yeah, I guess I would say, I'm just gonna play devil's advocate here to. If the ladder truck is sitting on School Street, right, and where is it more likely to be used in the town of Manchester if it's needed? Probably, I don't know, the downtown area, or
Well,
I don't know,
that's-
so it's just, it's perception, right? So I just think it's gonna be a little bit more of a difficult conversation, and I think it's a good
And I
conversation.
don't want to
have,
go
yeah.
down this
Yeah.
rabbit hole right now,
Yeah.
because this is, we need to have,
Before we decide to put money down on a new truck,
yes, yep.
we need to go through this because it's a very expensive
It is.
asset
Very true.
that almost never gets used.
It is, and.
That's,
However,
And
sorry, Brian, go ahead. You haven't had a chance to speak.
No, I think that, and I've asked this question in the past, how many times have we actually needed or used the ladder truck over the last year? I asked this question twice and never got an answer. I mean, if we're looking to spend a lot of money, I'd like to know which is the best avenue. A ladder
Yeah.
truck that we might use once or twice a year, or a pumper truck that we're gonna, or something else that's gonna be a more viable piece of equipment that we can use as a,
These are questions that we need the fire personnel here to answer. So rather than us going round and round and round with suppositions, I think we need to wait until.
But what I would suggest is in preparation then for the
Yes.
15th, is that if you have those kind of questions, send them to me and then I'll sit down with the chief and get as many answers as we can.
Agreed.
final observation, all of this is gonna happen when we have a new chief,
Yes,
Yes.
and that person has to be a factor in this.
right.
We'd like to have.
Well,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, so Brian, did you catch that? Send your.
yes, I did. Yes,
Okay.
I will send an email.
Okay. Next up, senior center options.
So another topic that can be emotional, well, something fair, I guess, which is not always a bad thing. It's good that people care. And have strong feelings, so that's always a good thing. So Brian and I have actually been working on an option. We had hoped to have a little more information to present tonight when we first put this on the agenda. We need to hold off on that for now. But nonetheless, it's fair to say that, over the last, 6 years, there have been multiple options that have been pursued. It's been a little frustrating that we haven't been able to bring any of them across the finish line.
That's not for lack of trying.
It hasn't been for lack of trying. We had the option on the Cornerstone Church. Their fundraising didn't materialize. COVID certainly interfered with that effort. That's not totally off the table, but, it's really dependent on them being able to secure the funds to build their new facility before they can move out of their old one. We had looked at having an addition, a wing off of the new gym at the elementary school as a location. So the cross-generational operation, which had some attraction to it. But again, that didn't pan out with spacing and parking and a host of issues that got in the way. We had drawn up plans that we were excited about with the old cricket building. And the old warehouse behind and the lower level. And again, that came close to being a reality. But then things changed and it didn't work out. We've had conversations with the old warehouse at the end of Tappan Street. And again, good conversations and sketched out some floor plans, but again, it depends on a willing seller.
And zoning.
Yeah.
And zoning. Municipal uses get a little bit of more flexibility, but so that didn't pan out as well. At one point, we had talked about the old burn dump as a site. In the end, it felt like it was too remote. Much prefer something more in the middle of town. We've also talked about adding on here onto Town Hall, behind the church.
The trees are.
Question, there's a nice little chestnut there that would have to go. And then the question of sea level rise and flooding, at least at the lower level. So that makes us hesitate there.
What is the actual space requirement?
It's I would say a minimum of 5,000 square feet, ideally 8.
So when will we be coming back to this?
So once we have some new news, which we hope to have in a couple, 3 weeks, I don't know if it'll make it for the 15th or not. It may have to wait till the June meeting for another update. But it's certainly fair to say that you have identified it as a priority. We continue to have our antenna up for options. And if there's someone out there who has a new idea, we're all ears.
Well, I can tell you, I chatted with a few seniors this morning and it's very much in front of their mind.
Yes.
The first topic they ask, that they will bring up. So when is something going to happen? I think in general, they have an appreciation that a bunch of stuff has been chased down. And I think that you did write in one of your articles earlier this year, a little bit about where where the senior center project was, but still looking around.
Yes.
Okay.
So stay tuned and hopefully we'll have some good news sooner rather than later.
Okay. We add that. To be out board action. To be on board action.
I'm sorry, what?
On the action items.
Oh, add that, yes.
It's.
Thought it was already there.
It's already there, just
But I
push
didn't
the
see
date out.
Right, where is it?
The second item.
Land use?
No, that's the first item.
Okay, I've got item 4 to delegate.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's the. I don't see it on. the-
Okay, you're right.
No, I don't think
It's not.
Right, I thought it.
I was looking at the one from last week.
Oh,
All right.
senior center, yeah, number 2.
What date have you got on
Not
that?
on the one I'm looking at. The 4/30/23 one that I printed out today.
I've got 426.
Yeah, I was looking at the, well, that was in the.
426 has it.
Yeah.
So we-
Oh,
we
is
had-
that the new packet?
We had it.
But I didn't
Okay,
update
there
that,
we
so
go. Yeah, sorry about that.
So, yeah, we had an update today.
My bad.
So we-
Yep, okay, there we are.
We'll keep it on there with a new date.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right, now, land management staffing discussion. That is item,
So again, this has been a topic of not great in-depth discussion, but certainly some discussion during the budget process. And in terms of the budget, we decided to keep the numbers basically status quo, understanding that we could shuffle how those dollars are spent if we want a different configuration for staffing. So currently, just as a refresher, we basically have town planner who's budgeted for 30 hours a week, plus another 10 hours for the housing trust, affordable housing trust. So that's one. The second position is basically a half-time building inspector, having office hours Tuesdays mornings and Thursday evenings, and then late afternoon does inspectional work. Our building inspector is the full-time inspector in Rockport, and then works for us part-time. We have a conservation agent. That's a 27-hour-a-week position. We have a conservation clerk. That's a 7-hour-a-week position, combined with the council on aging clerk. We have a planning board and ZBA clerk, one person who does both of those positions, and that's a half-time position combined. So those are the 6 different current slots of positions that we have. And there's been discussion that folks have had about possibility of increasing the hours of the building inspector. Expression of that being a desire that some folks have. So that would be a direction that you could go in. I'm a little hesitant to go that route. I think we could have Paul have some additional office hours if that should help, in terms of people being able to speak with the building inspector. I'm not convinced that it's the number of hours that's the issue.
right?
But that's a conversation to be had. Certainly for larger projects, I learned a bit of a detail today that if any construction over, and it's 35,000 cubic feet, which is a little different measurement. So it's a 35 square foot building, 10-foot ceilings, you've got 35,000 cubic feet. So anything of that size, the code requires that the applicant provide their professionals to do the inspections.
Wow.
And that they report, they give their reports to our inspector. And so that's, again, I'm just thinking that some of the concerns that folks have, we might be able to satisfy in without increasing our inspectors' hours. That's why I bring this up.
And that's already,
That's already, yes. that's-
Okay,
that's
so-
today's building code.
can we go back to some of these projects and say, you need to provide us?
Yes, I think that's a conversation to be had for sure.
Okay, and who actually does that? Would that come from Paul's office?
So yes, but it could also be part of the permitting process too. So that's flagged during
But we can
special
do this
permit.
retro.
Yes,
Can we get somebody in with some of the monies we have to do that part-time right now?
just to do that review, you mean, of existing projects.
Yes.
Yeah, we can get that done.
I think that would be very helpful. Oh, look at that. Oh, my God, Brian.
No distractions, Brian, that's unfair.
Oh, my goodness. Yes, okay.
Wait, wait,
How did the other
wait.
board members feel about that?
So what's the
Alright, goodbye.
cutoff?
It's 35,000 cubic feet.
Let me do the math on that. It's like 30 by 30 by 30. 35 by 35. In other words, something, I'm just wondering how big a building that is. I'm used to square footage, not cubic.
I know Greg said
So
that
it's
if
a
you get a
cube roof.
3,500 square foot house with 10-foot ceilings, you're there.
Or
Oh,
or an attic.
3,500 square
Or an
foot
attic.
house.
Or an attic, right,
Right,
so,
It includes the entire volume, attic space, basement space.
so that's pretty much,
That captures
those
most of the
projects.
construction.
It's
I
basically it's a McMansion is what it amounts to.
Yeah,
well,
not even.
not even,
No,
right.
it's a
But I-
small.
I
Yeah.
think that is something
It's a good
that,
sized house, but it's not a giant house.
no,
Is that something that needs to be in the zoning? Or is
No,
that
it
something
doesn't.
that needs to be
It's part of the building
passed by
code.
the? Okay, so the planning board has, we don't have to get the planning board to agree to that.
No, it's already part of the code.
The
But to,
state code, is it the Commonwealth of Massachusetts code?
so
Or is it-
in the Massachusetts uses the International Building Code.
Okay.
So it's in there.
It's in there, okay.
Yes. Yes.
and
But
I-
to reinforce it,
Right.
you could make sure that it's a condition of every permit.
Exactly.
of-
Yeah, no, I love that idea.
I think it should be a condition, and I think we should do it right now for anything we have.
Right, that qualifies. Yeah.
Yeah,
So is there anything you need from this board, or can you just go do that?
We can go do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Well.
Is there going to be any reaction from people who will say, oh, fine, I do my own inspections?
No, it has to be a licensed professional,
Okay,
and they're putting their license on the
they're
line.
putting their stamp on
Okay,
it, yeah.
fine. Okay.
It's like an engineer's stamp on the plan or anything.
Right,
It's,
right.
it's,
Licensed architecture, like architectural.
okay.
When you say regular inspections, what is that? Is that after certain events during the building process, or is this over time?
Right, no, there are certain inspections that get done at certain benchmarks in the construction process.
Okay, and for a typical house, how many events is that?
Oh, I'm not gonna
gonna be-
rattle that off by memory.
Electrical,
Oh,
you got the
John, there's gonna be,
Is that like 3 or 10?
It's
probably close to
Yeah,
3 to 5.
yeah.
Probably five-ish.
Yeah, probably 5. There's got to be electrical before they close out the walls,
Right.
plumbing. Yeah,
I remember of it, yeah.
Yeah, this is not an expensive event.
No, but it's keeping, it gets the information to our building inspector without having to chew up his time chasing down
So,
stuff. Thank you, that's the word I needed.
Sounds good.
Okay, make it so.
So I did put out, two different options
Yep.
beside the current option that we have. Yes,
What I've heard from people who say they want more time from the building inspector, generally, they're talking about things that have happened that were not in the approved plans.
Right.
They want somebody to watch stuff as it happens rather than, and my understanding is that that is not usually the job of the building inspector.
right, so the laws are set up for us to react
Right.
to what someone has done. So it's not designed to anticipate a violation. It's designed to react to a violation.
As your analogy of speeding, you don't stop somebody in anticipation of their speeding, you stop them when they're speeding, right?
I agree with that, and what Ann said. I think that is one use case. The other thing I've heard in the planning board meetings, as an example, is that there's a concern that the abutters are in some way have to tattle
Yes.
in order for the building inspector to take action or be notified of a non-compliance issue.
Or a potential, or a perceived
perceived
non-compliance.
non-compliance issue.
Because there are a
What-
lot. of
there seems to still be something missing around the building inspector's time or timing around looking at what is supposed to be done after the fact
Right.
without the abutters
having, and somebody just brought that up
Yeah.
to me just the other day.
Right.
They had a neighbor who was going to put in a simple garage. Well, the garage went from a simple garage to a dwelling on top.
Right.
And it's a dwelling, and the the comment to that is, well, it's done now. So do we have statutes, limitations on something like that?
Yeah.
And again, the abutter's the one who had to be
Yeah.
the bad guy, and they don't want to
Yeah, I
have
think
to do
it's,
that.
that's really the issue that I think I'm hearing from the
Right.
residents they want resolved, not so much the preemptive, although the preemptive would be nice. It's really, don't put it on the neighbors to have
Right.
to figure this stuff out.
Is the building inspector just make sure that you are meeting code? They are not comparing it to the specs for the structure that is being put together.
No, the building inspector needs to make sure that what is being built conforms to what was approved.
Well, that's exactly the issue here. I mean,
That's
you can do things
exactly what I'm
legal, but
saying.
not meet the specifications.
Right. So,
And-
so again, there's an issue and concern about the timeliness of that. So because before a certificate of occupancy is issued, there's the final inspection.
Which has to meet the specifications.
Right.
So what do I
but
tell
That's
them?
often, people feel that is late in the process.
Right.
And they get frustrated with it.
True,
Well, it is late
it's true.
a little bit, because,
Well, what about this situation that I'm talking about right now? It's done. The neighbor doesn't want to step in, and it's been, what, a year now? Year and a half, I mean, and it's all done.
so how did that pass the final inspection?
Exactly. I don't,
Well, that's been a complaint I've heard a couple of times on, even on the ZBA, where the neighbors have to complain about something, and then the inspector will come back and he said, well, I'll review the as-built. And then, as opposed to trying to be reactive, he's gonna wait until he looks at the as-built. And the opportunity is to nip that in the bud while the walls are still open, if there are some concerns, and he just doesn't get out there. And it seems to be a consistent complaint I'm hearing as well.
but again, how are people getting the CO if it's not what was on the original plan?
Do you have to get a CO for a garage?
That's,
Right,
Or
so I
that-
think the question is, there's something missing, Greg. We're not
Right.
quite sure. We're asking a lot of questions. I don't think we have the answers. But something is not right. and It has nothing to do with I won't say it has nothing to do with the proactive piece, but stuff is getting built that's not to spec. That's the alleged occurrence.
right,
And we either need data to say, no, that's not happening, or there's some gap that's just not being built.
I think the point of inspections aren't being done is what it amounts to. Prior to the issuing of a certificate of occupancy, the actual inspections aren't being done.
I don't want to go making allegations without the inspector here to comment or rebut. So I don't want to go there. But what I do wonder is the process somebody has to use to ask about the stages of a project without putting themselves front and center. How can someone do that? It's not that you want to have a little box you drop an anonymous note in, but
Yes, I mean, I think the problem we're trying to solve is there is a perception
mhm,
that final builds are being built different from the approved plan.
right.
That's the bottom line. There are enough examples, I think, coming before the ZBA or complaints that
Right.
there seems to be some documentation somewhere to that effect. We need to understand, where is the process failure? that would allow that to happen? And is it a process failure because maybe the process is fine and maybe the building inspector doesn't have enough hours to work to do all the inspections? I think that people are jumping to that conclusion, that the
Mhm.
building inspector is part-time, not enough. That may be the wrong conclusion. There may be something wrong in the process itself.
Right, because when you go talk to Paul and bring up these comments specifically, the answers clarify very, very well. However, there are plenty of situations where it does seem that something is going on that doesn't quite add up.
Yeah, something's off.
Yeah. So,
So maybe, so I think the action is for Greg, you to do a little research here and come back to us with a better understanding of the situation. I personally don't feel comfortable commenting on staffing until I know what the problem is. Number one, and number two, I was wondering if we could take into account some of the boards or committees not listed here that have their fingers in land management. Would we want to better understand what they do before we finalize a staffing approach? There are a lot of
well,
boards and committees that
this
touch
is
that.
where I think that when Greg brings up having a full-time land management director planner, that would help to satisfy a lot of what we're trying to get at in terms of governance as well.
That's my point, is
Right,
that I don't
right.
see any recommendations in some of the notes that I've seen about if we went with option A or B, then what would happen to the committees that are also engaged in land management? I should think something should change, but I don't want to presume what that would look like.
Greg's assistant needs an assistant,
You know,
administrative assistant needs an administrator. So, all right, but in the meantime, we can go ahead and have the projects which are currently underway submit.
yeah.
Those
And
those larger projects.
Yes, and I think that's, and then come back to the land use / management. I think we have some other things which, if we can get the current projects assessed, I think that would be important, but I think that we've got other things to come back to ahead of this one.
I have a small clarification.
Yes.
All made perfectly good sense that if you're building something new and it's 35,000 cubic feet. But
Mhm.
additions, is it the new part?
The new part, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So regardless of what was there originally, you would have to add 35,000 cubic feet to it before you got into this. Okay.
One of the things Paul explained to me in terms of, for example, if somebody has put on an addition, they've not pulled a permit, they've added another bathroom and a bedroom. When they go to sell, somehow that because they're going from what the house was assessed with, 2-bedroom, 1 bath, to 3-bedroom, 2 bath, somehow that triggers.
So a good real estate agent will want to make sure that what is built is fully permitted.
Right.
And if there's a permit missing, then the owner has a problem.
And that does not always come back, right?
Not always. There are buyers who will overlook that.
But there are times where Paul has gone in and had people rip walls out and say, I don't know what's behind there. So they've had to open walls up, show plumbing, wiring, things like that, in those types of cases.
Sarah has a hand up.
Ah, thank you. I don't see that. There. Oh, there. Sarah?
Yeah, I wanted to give you an example. Last fall, I spent $25,000 to have 2 sliders installed on my 3rd floor. There was never a final inspection. And the contractor said, well, sometimes Paul just wants videos. But to the best of my knowledge, there's been no sign off on the building permit. And that's problematic. It was minor, but it's still problematic.
Right. Thank you. That's good to know because that's a specific example we can take back. To the building inspector. And Sarah, it sounds, you don't hit the 3,500, so I don't think you pay for that.
I don't know how you do the math. I have one other question, Greg, just in the suggestions that you have for option A and B. You've got kind of a new responsibility, Director of Land Management.
Yep.
And I guess that's kind of like a supervisory type of position to just keep track. If you could provide a little bit more detail about conceptually what you think's is going to happen with that person, because I mean that's a skill set. Putting that together with a building inspector, I mean those are different skill sets. I don't know, or with a planner, I'm not sure. It was like when we've gone through the Board of Health, you're getting into
It's a job description.
health. Yeah, it's the job description, and I'm not looking for details. A lot of details, just enough to say, does this person exist? Does that mix well with the other folks that you're got two blended items here?
Yes.
And I just,
No,
I know you're going through your inventory of people and it's,
I'm still puzzled about how you can put an addition on. Because sooner or later, the assessors are gonna come by.
You don't have to let them
You
in.
don't have to
That's
let
the
them
issue.
in.
But if you don't let them in, then they make an assumption. And you pay taxes on the assumed assessed value. Also, the town does use drones. So if somebody's doing something that hasn't been permitted and they.
We don't use drones, but we do have.
Oh, I
satellite
thought they
photography.
told me they did.
Not drones, no.
Okay,
Satellite photography.
Yeah, yeah. It's,
All
it's.
that's a
it's
lot
set
better
at
than
in-
drones. That'd be scary. Anyway.
a long way away.
Oh,
They have very good cameras.
They get a
Oh, it's
certificate.
extremely accurate.
Yeah,
It's down to the square meter or so.
yep. Very cool.
Okay, so yes, more to be continued, but
To be continued.
it's helpful to hear your thoughts.
Thank you. All right. Did everybody have an opportunity to read over the review information? Anybody want to start? Well,
I don't know whether that printer is.
Sure.
But no, that's fine. I'll.
Okay.
Yes.
Nobody wants to, I'm
All
happy
right, I mean,
to.
I'll start.
Okay,
Okay.
otherwise I'm happy to.
All right.
John?
All right, Greg, thank you for the summary. And I looked at it from a perhaps slightly different perspective. I looked at it in terms of your ability to keep an eye on the pulse of what's going on in town. And your communications, I think, are excellent in that regard in terms of the articles that were in the paper. And I looked, there have been 13 weeks of papers in the first quarter. Okay, 4 dealt with safety, and of course, safety and safety staffing were the #1 issue that we were really dealing with at that time. So you're keeping people informed in that. There were 3 that were dealing with land use, the MBTA and everything else. So that's understandable, it was high profile. And 3 really dealt with governance, primarily budget and town meetings sort of thing. So you're certainly saying, okay, here are the critical issues that are going on that should, if they aren't in the front of people's minds, they should be. And I think you're doing an excellent job of picking the right topics at the right time and saying this is what's happening. So that's very good. And I would say keep up the work on all of that. Everything I think is going along well with everything you're doing. I think we had a little discussion the last time about volunteer fire department, but that's kind of a back burner sort of thing right now. There are other things we're dealing with regard to the fire department, unless you want to tell us differently.
It'll rear its head very soon again.
Okay, I mean, I know it's very high on the to-do list, but the fact is the fire department is, I'm not saying front and center, but it's an issue that having to deal with. And
Yeah, I would say it is front and center.
it fits together. And, you know, the succession issue, which has come up before, and I'm hoping it's kind of back in your mind there, but I think you've been doing a great job. Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Kathy? Thank you, Brian. I mean,
Supposed to
John.
go last. No.
Okay, you're gonna go last. Brian?
I just, I'm gonna piggyback on what John had to say. I think that Greg has been approachable. I think he's certainly has a better sense of what's going on in this town than a lot of us do. And no, I think we're well served by the current town administrator. Thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you. Anne?
I have no complaints. Not even any comments.
Okay.
Wow.
I
Kathy,
get to go then? No.
you're next.
Okay, so on the positives, you know, I think this last quarter was when we kind of really moved to the new regional center, and that was just extremely smooth. You know, extremely smooth. That should not be overlooked. So congratulations on that. I really like your suggestions for improvement on the budgeting process. I know you had wanted to bring some of that stuff forward before, and circumstances didn't quite, allow for that to happen, but hopefully we'll give you the support you need to take those things to the next level. So I think we're on a good path there. I agree with John's comment on the communication when you're, writing those letters, articles in the Cricket, extremely well chosen topics and extremely well written articles. You have a great talent for simplifying the communication on complex topics. I think you do a very good job of that. The improvements that we've talked about in the past, the succession planning, it's just obviously very critical. I do think on the communication side, we still see other people controlling your narrative a little bit on some of the hot topics in town. Sometimes there's a little back and forth in public that I don't think is helpful to the town. And I do believe more proactive communication doesn't allow somebody else to tell your story. I'll say it that way. Okay. And personally, I feel that sometimes the reason that happens is because you got to delegate. You got to delegate some more. You can't do everything. You are outstanding, but you can't do everything. And when you get busy, I think some other things around communication might fall through the cracks that in hindsight, if we could get you communicating differently or letting others communicate differently, I just think some of the angst we see come out in the social media and stuff like that, it doesn't have to be that way. It feels reactive a little bit, and I just think that's a function of time and delegating effectively. I would like to see, again, some of your direct reports write those articles to the Cricket. Bion does it. He does the water line, right? Can't anybody else take a turn? And it's skill building for them as well, right? So I would just like to see that, but you know, again, there's only one of you and there's only so many hours in a week. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Okay, and I agree with what everybody has said. I would say that I feel very fortunate that we have you as the town administrator. I think we are a very fortunate town. And I do agree with Kathy in terms of delegating, and I can appreciate the difficulty of it, and a lot of it, I think, stems from the fact that people reach out directly to you. Sometimes, and that's what the items you end up having to respond to that perhaps others could. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Did you have anything you wanted to?
No, so I'm anxious to move forward with that budget process and make it a year-round process. I think we need that. You always get caught by deadlines with the budget. So I do think that can help. And I'm also looking forward to, I hope we can move on it with the whole listening for concept.
Yes.
Getting us all out more and just listening to people, and their ideas. And so I think we hope to tee that up and get that underway in June. So I'm hopeful that that is the case.
Something that someone suggested to me is having a board meeting with an open agenda where people can come in and ask questions of the whole board.
Sort of an open mic.
An open mic, exactly.
Can do that, because then.
You can.
There's no agenda then, right?
But your agenda is
Anything.
open mic.
But we don't.
Public comments.
We take public comments, but we can't be deliberating on.
You can't make decisions,
Right,
but you can certainly listen and answer questions.
yes, okay.
But
I mean, that's a great idea. I like that. That's really nice.
Well, thank Mike Rosemary.
Ah, there you go, Mike.
yeah, no, I think that does have.
Yeah. We might even do it in a more informal setting, or are we saying Zoom as well?
I think you have to make, the room is only so big. And
Well, you could do a different meeting space.
but then why not take Zoom?
I mean, filling the room would be a nice problem if it was
Yes.
overflowing.
It would be nice, and I think that, yeah, okay.
A listening tour suggests that we're going to audiences, and this is just, come and ask us your questions or tell us your concerns.
Yeah. Great, nice.
So can we schedule that for August when I'm away?
Conversation
Well,
corner.
Yeah.
Scaled up.
Well,
There
yeah,
you go.
scaled up, but yeah, you might schedule it. I mean, these are Monday meetings and one of the other Mondays.
Well, that's planning board. The other
Oh.
Monday meetings.
Like
We'll plan it on a fifth Monday.
Yes, that we
Okay.
haven't taken advantage of a fifth Monday. Yep. that's good.
That's an August.
Right.
So only other comment I'll make is there's growing pressures on staff in terms of well, two things. Salaries are changing out there, and people are noticing. We have some great staff and they're very dedicated, but money does talk. So we need to be conscious of that. And so we're gathering some data to make sure we're not falling behind.
Okay.
And so we'll talk more about that in the future, but it is a concern. I'm feeling, some early rumblings from folks who I'd hate to lose them.
We had a discussion on that. Wasn't it the last meeting where we said,
Looking at
let's get some
American benchmark,
benchmarking? with
yeah.
regard to-
Yes.
Yeah, so we're starting to gather some information.
That's a driver for all of that, the number one driver.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's a little bit of a repeat, but it is something I want to make sure we pay attention to.
So when should we come back to this?
So that was probably end of June, just like maybe
Okay.
in June time.
All right.
That would give us good time to get some good data together.
Right, if the personnel person or somebody would be
Yeah.
able to,
Debbie's helping.
curious where we
Wonderful.
end up there.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Good. Thank you.
29th of May is fifth Monday.
Is a fifth, that's
Memorial Day?
Memorial Day?
That's Memorial Day.
Memorial
Okay,
Day.
no.
Yeah, that's gonna be, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Good.
I'm gonna be busy.
we've got a parade.
Yeah,
Okay.
July.
Next on the agenda, liaison updates. I do not have anything we had last time. John?
Yeah, I might make a comment with regard to the water task force. In fact, I spoke with Greg a little bit about that in the presentation last week or last meeting we had, you recall. Steve Gang went through some of the preliminary findings, and one of the recommendations was having some sort of a water board,
Right.
but creating a
You
separate.
might want to rename that.
Well, but more to the point, we've got probably too many committees, or we should be trying to shrink them down. So we had a discussion with the Sustainability Committee, which is you saw was a proposal up there. And it so happens that they have 2 vacancies and they need a bigger portfolio because they're getting, how much can you deal with compost, et cetera. So we're going to explore that as consolidating a couple of folks in there that are quote, water specialists, shall we say, and they'd be coming from the task force, I suspect. And of course, their function would largely be dealing with data coming out of this new meter initiative that was also part of this, was that just a lot of things you can do in terms of conservation and efficiency that you really just imagine when you see the data, all of a sudden
Yes.
things will light up in your head. So that's kind of the path. And we met with Allison. who's the-
Yes, Allison on Holtway.
She's on board.
Good. Great.
Okay.
Okay. Kathy?
I don't have.
Ann? She had very long.
I came here I left a school committee meeting to come here. The school committee the school administration has been accused of being opaque. There was a direct request from the Essex Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen for a list of classes.
The
and-
Essex Select Board.
The
Right,
Essex,
okay,
yes,
not-
yes,
not
I'm
us.
sorry, there was an elision there but yes, not us. For a list of the number of students with class names. And there was an underlying assumption that this is
What?
Students with what?
the number of students in each section.
With last.
Each grade?
The number of students in each section of each class.
Oh.
So you have a classroom, you have a teacher.
Yeah.
How many kids are sitting in front of you?
class?
All right, yeah.
The assumption was that would be something that would be very easy to put together. And in fact, given the way it works, that information is available, but it's entwined with stuff that is very sensitive personal information. And that discussion has been going on for some time. They were provided with a list of I don't remember whether it was agree, but the number of classes of some size, the number of classes, section, but yeah, five,
Mhm.
5 to
Yes,
9, so on and so
yeah.
forth.
Right,
And that,
okay.
that was felt to be unsatisfactory.
When you have that small number of
No,
students.
no, that
The data
that
that was
report, a
provided.
report that bridges,
Oh,
and doesn't list it by AP Physics. It's just the number of, it's mostly high school where the number of sections,
oh, but it
There are
doesn't identify the class
it doesn't
or
identify
what's being taught.
what's being taught.
So
Right.
what is the ask looking for? I mean, why
Well,
is this?
because that's what they need to know, because it's a transparency issue.
That's not what I.
Okay,
understand. So my understanding from the last meetings that I attended was that there's a narrative that the increase in the budget, even though the enrollment is declining, is primarily due to special ed and, some regulations we
Various
must adhere
mandates.
to, right? Mandates. There's a perception that there's also something going on with general enrollment that they would like to better understand. Specifically, classes in the high school, there probably are some that have very low attendance, and they're looking to understand what those classes are, so they can think of different service models, like
Right.
perhaps shared arrangements beyond the two schools. So I think that's,
okay,
that's my understanding.
and that's way beyond the remit of the select board or the finance committee.
I don't disagree, but it's my understanding that data was also requested by members of the school
And,
committee.
and it's being produced for the school committee.
Okay. I haven't seen them. I was not aware that they have seen that yet, so.
They have
that's-
not seen it yet.
Okay,
And the whole thing has gone over into the legal department because there is a question, as you get to that fine granularity, are you interfering with students' privacy?
yes, no, that would make sense, yeah.
And so that has.
You mean by listing out specifically which class, so then you know which students? Or
I
have
don't
a
know what
presumption?
exactly the privacy issue is,
Yeah.
but the administration is concerned. This is a request that they have not seen before specifically. Their lawyers had not seen that request specifically, and they need to research what the privacy issues are and how the information can best be presented in a way that's satisfactory to both sides. Okay, and then they went on to turf field funding. And apparently town of Essex did not understand that they had the right to object to the school's bonding. And that they agreed with a bonding with conditions. And now they say, no, you take it out of your reserves. And I don't know how far they are in their town meeting.
Tonight.
Tonight, yeah. It's happening right now.
Yeah,
I
That
don't
made
think they're
me,
done.
No, I
that
don't
made
think
me
they're-
think of something, there was some, and Greg, we may want to clarify the questions that are going on our ballot for
Mhm.
Manchester.
Yeah, I was
There
gonna
was
bring it
some
up.
misinformation going around that we were putting a Proposition 2.5 override from Manchester on our ballot. And that is not happening, and
There's a debt exclusion.
that exclusion,
Right,
right,
right.
but it's,
That was gonna be my topic for this week.
okay, all right. You got,
Yeah.
gotta clear that up,
Yeah.
real fast.
Yes.
yeah. So what was said in the meeting today was that if the operating budget passes to town meeting in Essex, and if it passes on the ballot in Essex, then the question of the fields becomes more open because
Some flexibility.
there's, yeah, because using reserves for the operating budget might be a way of solving a problem if one is occurring now. So
Are there two articles, one dealing with operating, another one dealing with capital, and I assume turf is in the
the
capital?
turf is not being mentioned at all on the Essex warrant tonight.
Okay,
They're just dealing with the operating budget.
okay.
But I thought there were two articles.
One for the Essex Technical
Yes.
and one for the region.
Okay,
So that, stay tuned.
stay tuned. And Brian, do we have you with us anymore?
Yeah, I'm here. I just can't, I had to change devices.
Okay, anything from you for liaison update?
No, I'm gonna, I think, Parks and Rec are pretty stagnant right now. I will attend the meeting and speak with Cheryl before our next meeting.
Okay, wonderful. Next up, we have consent agenda. Did I miss the information on the Little League sign? Everybody,
I didn't see any.
didn't see it in the packet.
Brian's request to put it on.
Didn't you have the-
Don't blame me.
Saw something.
We're blaming you, Brian.
There was an email.
No, that's the Cub
Oh, that's the
Scouts.
Cub
That's for the
Scouts, I'm
Cub
sorry.
Scouts.
I'm
So,
sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
Brian, what is it that? I think
The,
you need some more
I think
info on that.
it's the annual.
There was a
so they put
request
up banners.
for signage at the, along the outfield fences at Sweeney Park.
What does the sign say?
These are the different banners that advertise the different sponsors.
Right.
Sponsor, okay.
And this, I think, and there, one was just for the Manchester Essex Little League.
Yeah,
No.
so something that you have traditionally approved annually. It allows them to put up the different companies' banners on the outfield as part of the sponsors for the season.
I understand that we do it routinely, but I feel that it's important for consistency that I mean, I don't know if we can provisionally approve it for how the rest of the board feels. I mean, I know it's not a big thing, but I have concerns that if we do it once without having information in front of us, we're setting even though it's not a big thing, just.
Is this time sensitive, Brian?
No, I mean, it's, the season's opened. They'd like to acknowledge some of the sponsors with their signage. It's something that's, and as has been pointed out, it's been done. My kid played Little League there 20 years ago, and there was signage out there then. So,
Right. But I just,
Did you want to see this signage?
well, usually we get a complete request and this is where.
Well, do you
does
wanna, how
anybody
about-
else have any?
you want a written
You wanna
request?
go ahead and make
Let's
the motion?
go ahead.
Okay,
Move to approve the
Should we
the
just-
usual signage at Sweeney Park, recognizing the sponsors of the various teams.
Second,
okay, moved by Ann Harrison, seconded by Brian Solacey. Roll call vote, Brian,
yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
I'll say yes. But next time, bring us more information, Brian.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
Guess it was last year's memo could be the same.
yeah. Okay, for the rest of the consent agenda, is everybody all set to approve that?
Yes.
Mhm.
May I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second,
Okay, moved by Ann, seconded by Speedy Brian.
yes.
Roll call vote. John,
Yes.
Kathy? Yes. Ann,
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
And Becky says yes. We're on to the town administrator's report.
Okay, I'm sure you've noticed the School Street project. It'll be very hectic there over the next couple of weeks in particular. I would encourage people to just avoid it if they can, and just use Pine Street. There will be a few times when you cannot get to and from 128 on school. The next week or so, we will try to get up signs ahead of time to let people know that. But it is ongoing, so it's sort of a bit of a moving target, but the next couple of weeks will be particularly busy.
Is that's just
So you
during
can
the
with me.
day, it's not like
During
it's
the
closed
day.
for 2 days straight or something.
No, it'll always be open in the
For
evening,
it's hours.
right?
We're finished now, I think.
But it will be extra busy in the next couple of weeks. So just heads up on that.
This is the-
Thanks to Friends of Manchester Trees, you probably should have thanked them earlier when they were here. We have been designated a Tree City USA again. And there was a successful Arbor Day ceremony at the school.
Yes,
that
planted
I was
the
able
tree.
to attend. So that's always a nice event. Yeah, I think Brian will monitor this, but the issue of addressing the noise from the pickleball courts that still is out there. There was some pushback from neighbors who would prefer not to see
Right.
any materials go up. We don't want to create sort of a wall effect with those sound barriers. But voters did approve the sound barriers, so it may warrant a discussion with you in Parking Market at some point.
Question on the sound barriers, are they, is it a permanent or seasonal installation of sound barriers?
I believe they can be seasonal. I think they
You
hang,
could take them down.
I think they hang on the fence.
Can you get a picture?
Yeah.
Yes.
With 1,000 words here.
Yep.
I would like that. Second question. Has anybody done any sound analysis? yet?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we know what the decibels are on 6 or 7 or 8 different occasions right now. And at the street edge with 1 court going, 3 courts going, 8 courts going.
Some
Something
measure
like
of that, something like that. I can't,
All right,
where to be, how many days of
Very-
data we've
so
got.
we've got to.
Very low. It is such a, and Cheryl has the information on that. Brian, do you remember?
So we've got a reference point.
We do have a reference point.
Yeah, there's been some studies done. And there's a number of different options they're still weighing.
You mean in terms of, no, we were asking about decibel levels. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, the Parks and Rec were out there. I mean, the Board of Health was out there last summer, or last fall.
Your perspective.
It would, no. Well, and even the, no, it was in terms of health.
Yeah.
Impacts on health, the decibel number was, right around with
I don't know the
traffic.
numbers.
I mean, it was
I think it was in
not.
the-
Rock concert.
I want to say it was in
Yeah.
56.
My Apple Watch, no?
I can't remember that,
I'd be interested. I assume there's some sort of a little report or something.
Yeah, we can
summary.
get you more information.
I'd be interested in that.
But if, you know, the soundproofing is seasonal and then maybe the people who are concerned
Mhm.
about the view wouldn't mind it just for a few months.
Pickleball is more than a few months.
Yeah.
See, people want to know.
No, the
It's loud and cold.
There are people that drive by that want to know who's playing.
yes.
Yeah, that's true.
And, oh, there, I'm gonna get my stuff and I'll be right back.
And I think just because the monies were approved, it doesn't mean we have to spend them. However, I think this is conversation that needs to have more
To
participation.
that, Becky, to that point,
I would,
there have been a
But Brian?
number of people, to that point, there have been a number of neighbors who are questioning the expenditure now.
Yeah.
To, as far as the additional costs associated with soundproofing. So we're keeping a close eye on that.
All right, I think it
Excellent.
was 20,000 or something like that.
Right.
We voted.
And then there was one, if the soundproofing comes up, there was a question about the new, oh my God, I'm losing it, the benches that were just put out,
Mhm.
okay, that are gonna be staring at a fence now. at a,
Oh, geez.
That's correct. They're looking at the courts right now.
They're going to look
Right.
at the sound barrier.
now, so that's something that's also has to be addressed and weighed. So these are a lot of things that we're still trying to work through.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Okay.
And then just lastly, just looking at your calendars.
Mhm.
So we're up to 7 candidates for the MBTA zoning.
That's great.
That's excellent.
Really?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
There's some strong candidates. They've got some great backgrounds.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
So we're hoping if your schedule's allowed to start at
Yeah.
6.
I'm okay with that.
6, next Monday?
Monday.
Next Monday, the 8th, start at 6. And hopefully we can wrap it up by 7:30.
So, will we get all this information
Yes.
ahead of time?
Yep, we'll give you the people's bios, resumes, letters.
Like ahead of time this week, not next
Yes.
Monday morning?
Yes.
Okay,
We got them all.
okay.
As long as they send them to these guys, they can forward them on to us.
Yep.
So,
So that's the 8th with the planning board, the joint meeting, and then on the 16th, joint meeting with the finance committee.
and that's at what time?
That's at 7.
Okay,
And so two items. So we have our auditor who does the OPEB actuarial analysis. We do an annual update on that, and then continued discussion on budget process and goals.
okay,
And then suggesting, so then you have your meeting on the 15th, your regular meeting, 16th with the FinCom, that is election day. And then the 25th, we're targeting a Thursday. If that would work for people's schedules to have a more in-depth conversation on the governance project and the listening tour.
Mhm.
An open mic meeting.
Yeah.
We'll add that to the list.
That's what day? May?
Thursday, the 25th.
Was that Thursday? Ooh. Ooh. Watching my twins for 4 days.
oh, boy, sounds like Mary Ann's gonna be busy that night.
Loading in from New York City.
Okay.
Okay,
So that does it for me for tonight.
and with that, I think that we can call it a night.
Okay, do we want to talk about?
I don't think we need to right now. Greg, do you?
I'm okay. I thought we covered most of it,
Yeah.
unless you feel like we will have more information.
I would like to wait for more information
Yeah, I think
before executive session on it.
So in terms of contract negotiations,
Ron
have more
has
information.
his hand up. Ron?
Thank you, Becky. Just regarding the joint meeting on the 8th,
Yes.
I have one planning board member that won't be there and one that told me today she cannot be there at 6. Is that an issue? Do we need full participation? And are we voting that night on these at-large? And is an hour and a half enough?
That's a good question regarding voting on them. Historically, for something like this, the select board would interview and then not appoint right away. How does your board have a sense of how they would like to do it?
They just said that they would be available on the 8th. But then at that point, I think there were only 3 candidates or 4. And now I'm hearing there's 7. And we have a public hearing scheduled for 7:30. So just trying to figure out scheduling.
If I might make a recommendation, I think if what we do is have each each candidates have 5 minutes to present. And
Okay,
then we take 5 minutes or so for questions. And that way it's 10 minutes per candidate. That gives us an hour and 10 minutes. And
It's recorded, right?
it's recorded, so we can go back, thank you. And that way, if we start at 6:15, does that? What time is your,
I've only got response. I sent out an email to the board today and I've got responses from 2 out of our members. So I can't speak for the board tonight.
Ron, why don't you and Greg and I try and figure out how best to address this then?
Okay, that sounds good. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and that way we're not trying to sort it out here, and we can talk with our board members independently.
Are we going to have to come together for a second meeting to vote?
So that's the challenge.
That's the challenge, and yes, we would. So this is where, yeah, let's chat on that. Let's see what we
Try to
can
make
do.
it work for sometime next week, because we are probably. We're not blessed with unlimited time on
No,
this.
no, and
Right.
that's, and the fact that, the planning board already, I think we need to wait and hear from more members of the planning board.
I think if you can get a majority.
Yeah,
at
I would-
6 o'clock,
yeah, we gotta go.
I was gonna say, if,
I
yeah,
think I think you need to just plow through it and do the best you can.
okay. Did you hear that, Ron?
Understood. Thanks. Thank you all.
right. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so, and we still need to determine whether or not we'll be voting that night. I guess we have
I
to.
think
I
we-
think you should try.
I think
should
we have
try.
to.
If
We
at all
have
possible.
quorum for both boards, my recommendation, we'd get it done. It's
Okay,
just-
get it done, and I still think though that we need to let the applicants
Yeah, come prepared for
come
the
prepared, but
3-minute elevator speech.
right, so that we read what they really want us to know. We read, we have 3 minutes stopwatch, and then 5 minutes of questions, which is going to be difficult with potentially 11, 12 people.
Yeah.
So I wonder if we can
Well, one,
Come up with questions.
so this is a panel interview is what we're basically conducting.
mhm,
It's an extremely large panel.
mhm.
If we get the information, their resumes by Wednesday, let's say, okay, we could perhaps send our questions to the chairs of each committee and just let the chairs conduct the interviews based on the questions that we all submit.
Yes.
That's one possibility. It's just a very large panel.
And
interview.
that's a very good idea. That way,
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable because sometimes an answer brings up an
right?
urgent question.
Oh, understand. So it was just kind of a suggestion to kind of consolidate things so that we
Streamline,
don't
yep.
You don't want to be
ask
duplicating.
duplicate
No,
questions.
But I think we're smart enough to.
Right.
We know the
Follow-
time
you know,
constraints.
follow up.
But I think that's a very good idea. If we can at least start with some.
Right, but we could
questions
pipe in
and-
with follow-up
right.
questions, but it might
Have a
make
couple
the
minutes at
whole
the
thing go
Yeah.
a little faster.
A couple minutes at the end. That's a good point. That way we just go through each
Could we
person.
ask them for not just a resume, the sort of thing that shows up on an ordinary applicant, but for a 3-paragraph, why I am the candidate for this?
Some of them
That's it.
have already
Cover letter,
sent
yeah.
that,
But yeah,
but yes, and I think that's a good ask. We're not,
get that to us more than a day in advance, because once in a while my days
Yes.
go to pieces.
yeah. Oh, I don't understand that at all. No, that would be helpful. So I don't know, Debbie, if would be your ask to them.
So is it possible for us to get what you already have tomorrow, I guess, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then if there's additional information, you can send
Into the
it to
planning
us.
board.
Right, into the planning board,
Yeah.
and then we can start. Do you want us to send? you
I think that's
questions
a
or
really
not?
good idea.
If we
Ron,
have
what do
to.
you think about having board members send questions to you and to me? And then you and I ask the questions.
That's possible. That sounds fine with me. I don't know how the board will react to that. I can't speak for the board.
Well, I think that in terms of being most effective with our time, we're just going to have to do it that way. And if at the end we have time and other board members have questions that are not repeats of information we've already gone over, then I think we can entertain those.
I think it'll probably, I mean, we've all been in Zoom symposia, which kind of work, they're all text questions that are texted in, and then there's a person who's kind of, well, there were 8 questions that is along this one.
Right.
Consolidate.
Right.
It's easier on the candidates too. We don't want them to feel like it's a firing squad,
No.
Yes.
No, I hear you, but
People or whatever.
Well,
Really
and
not.
that's a good point.
You
That's a
know?
really good point, Kathy. So,
Yeah, and they're just gonna go down the line.
Yeah.
right,
it's-
and they're not
Bang,
gonna
bang,
wanna,
bang.
I
Who's
mean,
gonna
they
wanna
don't
join
wanna be
that?
there for hours on end.
No,
Okay, speaking of,
could we get the 7 members, just a little bio or whatever they've submitted? Can we get that, tomorrow so I can get that out?
Debbie is going to send that out. Additionally, she's going to ask the interested people, anyone who's not sent in, why they are tossing their hat in the ring and why they feel they would be appropriate for the committee. Ask them to send a 2 or 3 paragraph why. And then she'll get all that to us as well. But the information Debbie has already, she'll send out to everybody tomorrow.
Great, thank you. That'll help.
Thank you. Anything else? Anybody? All right then. May I have a motion to adjourn? So moved.
second,
Moved by Ann, seconded by John. Roll call vote. Brian, if you're with us. Oh, Brian, there
Yeah.
you are.
Yes.
John,
yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Becky says yes. Thank you, everybody, for attending this evening. Good night.
Yeah.
Okay, we're still recording.